Zionism is racism. Israel cannot be both. Israel is either a racist Jewish state or it's a democratic state for everybody. And that's what I would like Israel to be. I'd like a democratic solution, one state with equal rights for all its inhabitants. Your organization, Human Rights Watch, issued a report last year about Israel, and the conclusion was it is an apartheid state. And there are four major human rights groups in the last 2 years who issued similar reports, reached the same conclusion. Israel is an apartheid state. So apartheid is racism. Apartheid is discrimination. But Israel is the only member of the United Nations that I know which is officially racist. And I say this because of the July 2018 nation-state law, which says the Jews have a unique right to self-determination in Israel. Unique means exclusive.
Yes.
It means Arabs have no right to self-determination. It means even if Arabs became a majority, they would still have no right to self-determination. So most certainly Zionism is a racist ideology, and it is largely responsible for the Nakba that has unfolded throughout the last century and continues today.
It starts with a simple question and ends in objective reality. Through our journey from there to here, we find one another and ourselves. And as the next 24 hours breaks free from our last, we gaze onward in reflection of the day.
Come to your own conclusions. Stay vigilant.
Welcome to the Daily Wrap-Up.
Friday, October 3rd, 2025. Thank you for joining me today. I was going through everything I was organizing today, and two things that I talk about often that I'm sure won't shock you, at least from this platform, kept smacking me in the face that I just felt were important to, not as if like today is the breaking point, but just, sort of like we discussed the reality of the funding around, the terrorist organizations, Al-Qaeda, ISIS, and the reality of where that tracks back to that are shockingly easy to prove. There's two things today that I think are relevant that we need to just make sure we're just not mincing words about. No mental gymnastics, just very obvious. This is no longer something that we can intelligently deny. And that is obviously that I think that the Make America Great argument that was put forward, at least where we are now, is not the first thing. It's not the forefront of their direction. You could argue that by helping Israel and carrying out more war and more spending and whatever else you think, all the opposite of what was promised, that maybe that somehow adds up to making this country great again. Maybe, certainly possible. It's not what was promised, and it's certainly not in the immediate interest of the United States. And I think it's really important. I mean, you look around, look at the partisan conversation, one by one, massive, prominent MAGA Republican, reporters, influencers, journalists are coming out and saying, this is not what I asked for. This is not what was supposed to happen. This is putting Israel before the United States. Who's making these decisions? What about Pfizer? What about the self-amplifying child? Every single direction. So just got to be honest about this. Let's stop playing these games and falling into these traps of the broken logic and the mental gymnastics of people that have an interest in selling you on the status quo. And that is the mainstream alternative media today, as well as the reality that Zionism is 100% on the table right in front of us, influencing policy in this country. That's not something to be debated anymore. To the degree to which it's happening is something we can discuss, because the reason I'm saying it like this is not a nuanced point. It's on the surface. The argument now, as much as they try to make the battlefield that it's a lie, that you even bring it up, it's anti-Semitism, the argument is that it's not necessarily wrong. They're not a foreign agent, even though, yes, it's very obvious. All of the conversation around Zionism, AIPAC, ADL, all these different points, yes, very much acting for the interest of a foreign government on the surface, by the way. But the argument is that, well, it's just an American ally, and we're working for the interest of this American interest from an Israeli perspective. But it's not really much of a nuance, because you can look and outline outside of the narratives that you have political figures, in some cases, in many cases, intelligence entities from Israeli intelligence, government entities from the Israeli government, extensions of that on the record, like paid from the government in 1,000 different ways, who stand interconnected between the U.S. government, or literally in the U.S. government, or in corporations, or in government situations that dictate policy for social media platforms, or media platforms, or corporations, or surveillance companies, or cyber technology company. I mean, it's insane. And they'll publicly state that these things are being done for the interest of Israel, with the argument that that's somehow in the interest of America. And if you dare criticize that, you must be racist. It's not even really working anymore. It never really made sense if you just have a brain to look into it and weren't cowed along by people screaming things at you. And now it's largely the right doing that. The same thing they call that from the left. Why? Because it's a left-right two-party illusion game to hide that. The most obvious thing in front of us in the entire conversation, probably many other things too, but let's realize the linchpin that this represents, and that the two-party illusion in and of itself at the same time seems to be losing a lot of steam. Why? Because they're the same conversation. That is what keeps you from looking at that or other things they want to keep you from seeing. And who do you think is doing that? All the same people we talk about and have been lately more than ever in my career, because it's important, I think, to highlight it. That they have more influence than anybody else, even over corporate media, and they're doing their job, keeping you trapped in the binary left, right. I hate the other side. Only they're the problem. As soon as we can get rid of them, we're going to win. As soon as we get rid of them, we're going to win. And it just cycles and tumbles down every single time. Now, those two things we have to be honest about. Today, there's a lot of other points we'll get into, but you'll see the central thread. It's insanely obvious from top to bottom. And again, I'll point out the ones that are starting to point this out to you from left and right. And I'm not even saying I agree with everybody there's, to put it simply, each one of them in different ways. I could point out things that I disagree with. My point is that I think everybody, whatever their interest is, as long as they're not lost in this two-party paradigm, almost like pro-government, for the government agenda mindset, we calling it out. It's very interesting to see even people within the government like Marjorie Taylor Greene and others, even though when you'll notice they start saying, well, the left is the terrorist party, because that's the real point, are out there calling out things around Israel. The weird ADL point that suddenly we're against the ADL. We'll go into the lie that really was. But why are those things happening? Because of what we just talked about and the need to convince you that that's not really what's going on. That's how I see it all. Most of it's proven, but please, I hope you will go through the information we present and look for yourself. Challenge me, prove that I'm wrong, come to your conclusions about it, but just look at what's being presented today. Now, let's start with one couple quick points that I want you to see. Now, largely what we're going to get into, I have a few opening points I want you to see, some two-party illusion things that relate to the larger discussion. But we're going to get into, let me see, what was it again? There was a couple other things that I added. Oh, that's right. I wanted to reiterate the Pfizer deal very reasonably quickly. And that's the whole MAGA overlap, or a couple interesting partisan points that I want to jump into now that you'll see right in the beginning that I think are very interesting. Foreign policy points about Venezuela, one point about Ukraine, and just what that, I think all of these are very much in the interest of Israel's agenda. And I'll make my case, as well as the fact that we'll talk about, and I might decide to skip past briefly, or rather just go over quickly the immigration parts for time. I'm limited on time today, but ultimately, the main part is an update on the Charlie Kirk conversation, Larry Ellison, Oracle, social media censorship, and how all of this seems to be the same conversation. Now let's start. Oh, and then if we have time, updates on Gaza and the deal around that we were recently just going over in very deep fashion, but I want to make sure you saw the kind of next few steps after what we just discussed. So I want to start with this point to shout out the independent media token project that is still ongoing. It has been increasing, and I think it's important to see what this is just a conversation that I was unfortunately unable to join, but I will be on the next one where Corey, Steve, and Charlie were talking about where it's at, the development. And it's just, again, for those who don't remember, it is a great project that ultimately is, what I was thinking about the other day, what I find interesting is even if it doesn't succeed, shortly enough, you're going to see the effort to make it so, which will be giving grants for nothing to people who need it in the independent media. And let's even say hypothetically this thing fails. The point is those things are still going to happen because the game plan is to give away free money to independent media who would don't otherwise get it for nonpartisan objective type of work. And that if people hopefully see the obvious virtue in something like that, can go out and spend $1 for, it's 0.00001 at this point, get yourself 100,000 of them. And maybe, that's your donation to the idea. And hopefully if this builds, we'll all benefit. Most importantly, average, unknown, independent media people out there trying to make it work and doing it the right way. Sort of like the same way independent media took is doing it in a world full of manipulation. Now, whatever and rightly so, I agree, skepticism about all cryptocurrency. I find it hard. I'm interested to hear what you might say, how you could see something that gives free money away to independent media as a bad thing. But I get it. Skepticism is right, is important today. But I'm glad to see this improving. I'm looking forward to the way it continues to go forward. And I hope to hopefully join the next conversation on this. And I would love to see some money go to people. I can only imagine how that would help me when I was just starting doing this. And I use it now, quite frankly. But the point is not going to be us. That's not going to happen, because that would give me that. If I was outside and I saw that, I would think that was weird. It's going to be obviously, if ever, us, probably not, be focusing on people on the lower end of this who are out there doing great work that we decide as the board, but ultimately are getting suppressed and censored, ignored, largely because probably nonpartisan and going after the right things. And hopefully dump some money in their lap and say, build your project better, make your documentary. How amazing would that have been for us in the very beginning? That's the idea. So just want to point that out again, and we'll circle back to it as we go forward. Now, the image I took from today, which I just have to say is one of the most the saying, an image, what is it? I'm blanking on that. Something as 1,000 words. What is the saying? Why am I blanking on it all of a sudden? Image is whatever. You know what I'm getting at. The point is that in an image, that there's it really does give you, there's so much, you could read into it. It's subjective. Let's make that clear. It's my opinion, but man, does that speak volumes. The idea that he's sitting in the Oval Office, right, with other people in there with him, holding the phone for Netanyahu, hold my beer kind of thing. Or I guess that doesn't really apply, but the point is that he's holding the phone and like, visibly looks uncomfortable and unhappy. I just thought that was very, very, I don't know. It stands out to me, and it really does speak volumes. A picture is it's worth 1,000 words. Thank you, Katie. I don't know why I couldn't get worth was the word I was missing, but I don't know. You tell me. Just look at that face. You don't fake that. I don't know. I found that very, very telling, and to me, somebody who's such a narcissistic person, why would he do that in a room full of other people? And my personal gut, because he's not the one making the decisions here. White House has released a photo of Donald Trump holding the phone in his lap as Netanyahu reads the apology letter to Qatar. Right, the Qatar, the place that they murdered a bunch of innocent people and bombed the government. I mean, while they were negotiating, by the way. Oops, sorry, Netanyahu says, because we made a mistake. No, that was very coordinated, and his fake apology is supposed to make it all better. In any case, we had a great panel about free speech that I hope you won't miss. Free speech or limited speech, there are no other choices. Really great conversation, I think, and it's important to, my point, you guys watch this show, I think it's important to err very aggressively on the side of the principle today. And how can it be wrong to err on the side of the principle of the Constitution? Of course, you'll called a terrorist by left or right, depending on what season it is, I guess. Great conversation. The version had gone out, Jason, I believe, put it out in 2 parts. So ultimately, if you get confused by that, just check the full version right here for the Independent Media Alliance. And I think it's important to get into this and ask yourself these questions and really debate the merit of where this is. I mean, because look, I want to have a conversation with somebody who truly believes that maybe these things should be limited. I don't believe that. I think that's unconstitutional, but maybe your argument is that's where we need to go for X, Y, and Z. And if you have an educated, passionate argument, lay out your case. I'd love to hear it and have an amicable conversation about it. We just don't have that anymore, because I'm arguing that it's the opposite. We should be going hard the other direction. That there is no place in which words can be deemed violence or a crime in any context. Because realistically, that is the reality of free speech. I don't know how we ever got away from that. We have a conversation about fire in a theater, and we get into some good points in this. But I argue me just saying that will be framed by the power structures today as me being a terrorist. That's how crazy this has gotten. Or you can go back so many years and recognize they were calling people who were believing direct quote, by the way, from the State Department, believing too much in the Constitution, put you on a list as a possible terrorist. That's not a joke, by the way, believing too much in the foundational documents of this country. So what that means is understanding the reality of, for example, that we could, alter or abolish the government should we realize that they're not acting in our interest. To them, that makes you a terrorist. That makes them no longer in line with the Constitution. So let's figure out what that really means. Think about that. And in no way am I ever calling for violence. And you guys know that. I've said it my entire career because I'm not. I don't believe that's the answer, but that's what they would want that to imply, that I'm somehow anti-government. So, and then here's the game today, right? So if I just said that today and somebody went out and shot up a government building, does that make that my fault? No, it does not. Not one, I never said that. No, two, I would never advocate for that. And three, I didn't do that. But you see, that's the game they're playing today. Much more nuanced points are coming around where it's very much, more difficult to make that decision. But it's pretty simple if you just err on the principle, which is what it should always have been. Now watch this. I think it's a really good conversation. Now, 2 points on free speech or actually 3 that I thought were very interesting. So we get in this game right now where both sides like to pretend to advocate for the actual free speech, but point out the other side's things as the one that doesn't apply. All they're doing is creating a loophole, a scapegoat. They're creating a situation where they get you to rationalize why you should ignore inalienable rights, but only when that happens, when they do it. No, that's their decision. If you're choosing to ignore it, then you don't believe in it. Or you open the door for it to be applied whenever some power structure decides, and that's not how these things are supposed. That's not the reality of an inalienable God-given right. Now, this person writes a ridiculous article. Abolishing whiteness has never been more urgent. And that would be equally as ridiculous as kind of what Elon's getting at, but I think using it against you, as for any other version of that. Abolishing blackness, abolishing Jewish, abolishing Christian, abolishing race or religion or anything, that would be ridiculous. Just to make because it's broad stroke, it's ridiculous. It is the definition of racism to say everybody this color is the same. Everybody with this religion is the same thing. It's bigoted. It is ridiculous. It's not woke to point that out. It's the definition of the word. But it's different. You could do and say whatever you want because that's your right. I have every right to say I think you're disgusting. Anything beyond that, government involved in any way, firing anything else outside of an individual making a choice about their private enterprise is a problem. I mean, it's very simple, guys. Even like fire at a theater kind of point. The point, as I said in the show, an individual can sue you for that. The owner of the building can sue you for what you did, and a judge can make a decision as they want. It's actually pretty simple. They can look at the case and go, yep, that was your responsibility. I'm going to charge you. Somebody can appeal that later. The reality is anytime the government gets involved is when it becomes a violation of your rights or censorship, or rather free speech issue. Most people don't really understand free speech or censorship in that context. They think somebody deletes a comment on a platform, censorship. If the government did it, yes. And the fine line we get into is if the government's involved with a platform, we talk about that. It makes that line very fuzzy, and that's why they did that. Anyway, so he says abolishing whiteness has never been more urgent, the article anyway. Elon Musk says it's not okay to say this about any group. Now, I'm not saying Elon's suggesting censorship. I get the sense that that's where he kind of wants this to go, just because he's manipulative, in my opinion. But what he says is right. Not okay, not illegal, but not okay to say it. Yeah, we can all agree. That's a gross thing to say about anybody, but you know that it's okay for them to say another they're doing this about Muslims right now. So it's a whole ridiculous game. But what would you think if he said that has to be taken down? You can't say that, just like they can't say, okay, I disagree. It's the same kind of point, right? Just like them saying, anybody doing that is allowed to say it, but it's equally ridiculous when they do, and we have the right to point it out. But I get the sense that they're trying to play that game again, where they're the ones that need to be taken down for X, Y, and Z. And this is happening all over the place. Here's another example. Captain Dreamer highlights this article, I guess, that says, Turning Point USA, a case study of a hard right, 2024. How dare they have an opinion? They're literally making this a big deal. You can disagree with thinking it's far right. They have an opinion to think whatever they want. Outline a case, even if their case is you're disgusting and racist and terrible person and don't deserve to live. Oh, no. Does that mean they call for death? Guys, this is the government pushing you into being the pearl clutching, just like you're calling out about the left if you think you're on the right. I would agree that's very tasteless. No decor. But the point is they have a right to say what they want. And that's not even as far as this goes. They're simply just calling it a hard right. And they say, we cannot let the SPLC get away with pushing the same rhetoric about Charlie Kirk as get away with saying things. Oh my God, you're just like the left, or rather the team sports side. Again, to be clear, as always, for those news to the show, I think most people, liberal or conservative right now, aren't ridiculous and are aware that their free speech is important, but have issues in certain areas where they've been convinced that shouldn't go that far. Now, that's my point. We can disagree on that. You can argue there's a line, but then admit that you want limited speech, and we can agree and have a conversation. The point is most of these people don't do that. I'm a free speech absolutist, and then go, but that's violence. That's too far. No, in fact, it's not. That's not even close to even something you would overlap with violence. They just have an opinion that you find offensive, and you're doing exactly what you thought was the most ridiculous snowflake thing when the left did it about woke ideas and hate speech, which is the same thing you're doing about anti-Semitism, by the way. It says, in May, they called the Turning Point USA a hard right group under report. So that's why they killed him, right? Their fault, dismantle censorship. No, you guys are all falling for the most easy trap I've ever seen. Elon Musk says incitement to violence by evil propaganda. See? This is getting people killed. So now you're telling me that nobody's allowed to say anybody else is what they think they are for the worry that that person might do something. And I mean, are we actually not? This should be laughed at. Elon Musk doesn't believe in free speech, even remotely. If he's going to tell us that somebody calling a group hard right is enough to get somebody killed, therefore you're not allowed to say it, or that it's not even worse than that, guys, that it's incitement to violence, therefore you can be arrested for that. I just have to really stress how wildly over the top this is. I mean, are you guys literally calling the entire left a terrorist organization and then clutching your pearls at the words hard right? This is why I'm trying to stress that most people, I mean, if most people are in this category, we're doomed. Like, period. I don't think that's where we are, because that's pretty clear that they wouldn't be trying to aggressively propagandize everybody if everybody was already there. Think about that. So this is the minority, and most Americans have been tricked that we're a good place fighting for good things, rather the government, I mean, and are still of the mind that we believe in the Constitution, even if they have a line. This is pushing us too far. And it's the left or the right literally becoming what they called out about the left. It's very, very transparent. Marjorie Taylor Greene says paid social media influencers should have a signifying badge or better or different color check mark informing the public about their account is paid for. Okay. Paid content. Now that might, I mean, I had to think about this one for a minute, because there's a logic to the idea of people who are paid influencers, right? But here's the thing. This will, one, absolutely be manipulated by these structures and the government, and two, is a free speech issue at the end of the day because of that. But the reality here is, first, if they did this, guys, they do this already. You're supposed to do this if you're being paid to do it. People just lie about that. So all this will do is be a badge if those are willing to admit it. All the Zionist influencers, all the China influencers, all the same thing. They wouldn't admit it because they want to. So that's ridiculous. So at the end of the day, this is just a way to put it on people that they want to for their own propaganda reasons. Think about that for a second. I find that really interesting, because this is masquerading as logic, but it won't work that way because none of them really want it to. That's my opinion anyway. So let's talk about two-party illusion stuff before we get into Pfizer, foreign policy, Charlie Kirk, Gaza, Israel. You might have seen this video. I mean, and it's got some very interesting responses from people. And it's got some pretty good reach in general. I think it resonates with people. So this video, Donald Trump put on his Truth Social. And as a Patriot Voice wrote, Trump just posted this on Truth Social, and all I can say is WTF. I'll play it first, just a little bit of it, and then I'll have more context for what I have to say. It's embarrassing. You know, Dems your babies. I mean, this is like kindergarten stuff, guys. And it's like, I honestly think that's kind of the point. I don't think I think it's a choice to make it this ridiculous. Not that it's just, I mean, look, it's kind of, I could be wrong. I mean, that's what's crazy. It could just be that that's what they think is funny and cool. And it's wildly ridiculous. Not only there's a lack of decorum, talking about we're trying to make things, it's divisive. You're trying to cause division. Not these ones, but them, all of them. You know what else? I'm not going to say he made that, but he posted it. So it's the same difference. And it's just this ongoing thing where I mean, is that not incitement to violence? You're talking about killing the Reaper. You know, you put a bullseye. Oh my God, they mean to kill him. Well, what do you think the Reaper means? But see, I'm not a child. I'm not going to say we know that it meant the kill because it's an assumption. But see, they both team sport politics game sides will do that. But this is just sad because it's about trying to cause hatred. It's trying to cause people to get angry and outraged and, just lose themselves in stupid things like this. And of course, that gets into the whole thing about the shutdown. It's, the stupid game about this, the way it always goes. If you're nonpartisan, it's just noise. But now, they did this and they shut it down. We're going to do the Trump's taking advantage of it like they do every single time. And at the end of the day, this is somebody connected to Project 2025. And oh my God, it's just this whole noise, which there's meaning to it. There's something there's worth looking into for sure. Actions are what I care about. So I said, whether you want to admit it to yourself or not, and it's not about left and right, this government is the laughingstock of the world right now. And for more reasons than you may want to realize. We are being played and laughed at. Speak out about it. It's not meant to be, not left or right. It's not about the current event. It is the reality. I mean, it's not hard to see either. Now, to be clear, as somebody commented before, I'm not saying we should necessarily care what others think about people shouldn't care what others think about them inherently unless it's somehow something worth, you're interested to find out. Right? That's a self-confidence issue. Who cares what they think? I'm going to be confident about the same thing. It's not necessarily important to care what the rest of the world thinks about but that's not my point is. My point is that I care about this country. And so whether or not they think that, I look at it and I'm going, what the hell is going on? How did we get here? This is embarrassing. I think most Americans, if you just look outside of the controlled spheres, see it, calling it out, left and right too, even within the game. This is crazy. The world is laughing at us. Now, it's not because, my point was I'm not caring because they think that. I think it's interesting to see people who are not lost within our political game who can look around and say, all of that is crazy. Just like we can look at countries and go, wow, that's kind of crazy right now. That's what's happening. The world sees this and we look ridiculous. Now, why would that be the case? Is that in the interest of American politics? No, not even remotely. But see, the question is always, who benefits from something like that? You could think about that. I'm not even saying I know for a fact. Think about it, though. What is happening right now that makes sense? Why would they be doing, and the dumb video aside, all of the other actions that clearly are in the interest of somebody other than Americans, other than even the American government. It's time to ask these questions, guys. Now, this is just the one quick overlap to the shutdown point. This is just so ridiculous to me. Donald Trump administration reportedly hijacked employees' accounts while they were on shutdown, whatever that. Hey, hashtag keep it shut down, right? And the event is the less government, the better. But they hijacked their accounts to send emails to people blaming Democrats for the shutdown. Even though it's obviously a two-party game here, guys. And of course, the lie they keep spinning about giving illegals, healthcare. Now, look, there's some level of truth to this overarching conversation, but what they keep screaming is just simply not true. And it's embarrassing, and you could look for yourself. But they do it because that's the game. And both sides are playing this game. It's always the same thing. Overall, this is just small, petty stuff. Those are the people who are running this country. Small, petty, small people. Now, Matt Gaetz points something out I think is interesting on the overlap. Just showing you the weirdness of the two-party game right now. It's all over the place. Alex Jones puts out high-level DOJ sources have confirmed. Yeah, just like they confirmed to him months ago that the Ukraine war was over, like they confirmed to him months ago that Netanyahu and Trump were breaking up, like they confirmed to him World War III, on and on and on, but that Alex Jones was wrong jar is overflowing, but we keep hearing the opposite. The bottom line is he says this. So did you confirm that, or are you just repeating reflexively whatever the CIA informants tell you? He keeps getting things wrong based on these high-level sources, so why would we keep... Or how about the other one? How about this one? Not that I get too distracted here. Oh, come on. That popped up a second ago when I was doing it. I guess not now. Oh well. Here real quick. The point was a claim that all of these people were going to go to jail. And I think it's important to recognize where we currently are. Oh, that was me. Sorry. In case you guys forget how to do this, I think there's a faster way to do this today. Somebody was saying it the other day, but this is just what I'm used to. I'm sure it's going to be right here. There we go. Okay, so same thing. August 23rd. big actions coming from the DOJ. What was that? That Obama, Comey. What about Comey? What's going on? Yeah, it's in the process, right? I know. We'll see how it ends up. The evidence already clearly is panning out to be a nothing burger, but let's keep hoping and hoping and hoping. Hopium. But I said again, followed up on the 29th. Hey, any update on these big actions coming? Well, let's see how long this continues to not be there. I hope it does. I genuinely hope they go to jail, but I hope both paradigms, the whole of the government is held accountable. But I just want you to recognize how often that happens. But okay, today, big DOJ sources confirm investigative journalist Emerald Robertson, that Deputy AG Todd Blanche is sabotaging Trump's war against the deep state, whatever that means to you. Seeing as how everyone's got a different definition. To Jones, it stupidly means just the left, apparently, even though it makes no sense for a deep state power structure to only go after one side of a party structure. It's all stupid. But yeah, whatever that means to you, the sabotaging the thing they're doing, maybe. I'm not even getting into that. Maybe. Who knows? Maybe it's true. I thought it was interesting. Matt Gaetz says this is absolutely false. Todd Blanche is a patriot and has been standing with President Trump for years now in the courtroom and now at the DOJ. I'm in contact with folks at the Justice Department, and Todd is the reason, this is what's interesting, he's the reason so many great things like the Antifa terror designation have happened. By the way, he hired January 6th. So how do you make sense of that? Is somebody misleading Jones to make that the case? Is that Israel informing him and Matt Gaetz is coming from the who knows? But this is so interesting as they're both supposed to be on the right. They're both supposed to be fighting for you tell me. Maybe he's just misinformed. That's probably the most likely when dealing with Alex Jones. But overall, the reality is interesting to me that he's behind the Antifa point. That it's very interesting. I'm not even saying I have the answer. It's just conflicting, and I think that's interesting within this field. And MAGA Granny says once again, Alex Jones is a lying POS. Why does any sane person watch him? He's a psycho who makes money off of other psychos. Take off the foil hats. Blanche is one of us. I don't agree with that. I think Blanche is part of the system. What's funny is these are people within the MAGA side who are calling this out. I just want you guys to sense that outside of the game that everybody they highlight as the full thing, it's all over the place when you really get into the weeds. Now, this was a funny point. This was on October 1st. This is Jason Cohen, former liberal Democrat, Alan Dershowitz, former Democrat, goes scorched earth on the Democratic Party. Don't you love? So it's so funny how I'm like, yep, what does that show you? To the blind children of the partisan team sport politics game, we're winning. Except, wait, isn't he a deep state pedophile Democrat? But he's on our side now. Yay. Okay. That seems to make no sense whatsoever, but it's just like everybody else that was at Trump's inauguration and everybody else that was the deep state globalist technocrat Zionist. But it's okay. They're on our team now. So doesn't that make you the bad guys? Or it's all the same thing, which is really the point. Overall, I said, so when all the terrible people that the Republican team sport politics players were telling us we're absolutely going to go to jail under Donald Trump, under Trump's, just reading it too quickly. When all the terrible people that the team sport politics players were telling us we're absolutely going to jail under Trump start joining the team, and not only do they not call this out, they cheer. What does that show you? I mean, for me, Alan Dershowitz is like all the rest of them, he's trying to run to the team that he thinks they don't care about left and right. They care about using the power structure to benefit and hide their disgusting criminal activities. So he's going, yeah, I'm a Republican now. Does that make me safe? Either way, if you're on this team that's now welcoming Alan Dershowitz, you might want to think twice about what that shows you. And then realize that both sides are doing it. Now, one quick thing that I thought was just very telling from the partisan side of this whole weird Trump coin thing. Again, it's for all I know, it could very well just be a head fake to get people doing this. We're not going to waste too much time on it, but I find it interesting for one main reason. This says, no, this is from the government, by the way. This is U.S. Treasurer Brandon Beach, and he says, no fake news here. These first drafts honoring America's 250th birthday and POTUS are real. They're literally going to make a coin with Donald Trump. That's what they're telling you. And these are the people that would do it. Except this person rightly goes, but what about the law there, guys? And that's very right. In fact, historically I can look back and see that that's never happened before, but I didn't know that was actually against the law, but it makes sense now. The point she cites was B right here, and I'll read it to you. This is the general overlap of this exact practice of the making coins. The Secretary of Treasury may mint and issue only the following coins. And it goes on to make us, sizes and differences, right? Then it says the $50, $quarter. Oh, is that the right one? No, it's further. right. Hold on. I can't type. Oh, shoot. Damn it. Sorry, guys. My computer's been acting so... I don't even think I hit that. Okay. Here we go. The United States coins shall have the inscription "In God We Trust." And I was curious if that... Yeah, it does say that. And then it says the obverse side of each coin shall have the inscription "Liberty." The reverse side of each coin shall have the inscription "The United States of America," and the E pluribus unum, and a description of the value of the coin. The design on the reverse side of the dollar, half dollar, quarter dollar, is an eagle, subject to the other provisions of the subject. The obverse, where was it again? Right here. The 2005 shall bear the likeness of Thomas Jefferson. The reverse. Make sure. Wait, am I getting the wrong spot? Here's right here. Only the portrait. Did I miss that right there? I could just tell you this, but it's always important for me to make sure you guys see it right from what it reads. Hold on. How am I missing this? This is directly from the Grok point, by the way. I should have just highlighted this earlier. It's right. Basically, when asked about this in general. Oh, and I want to make a point about I'll say it after this. I've been simply asked, is this against the law? That I wasn't aware. The proposal about the Trump coin, and it simply says, is it illegal? And it says, yes, the proposal appears to violate federal law as it currently stands. And it specifically cites the same point. That ultimately it has to appear, the name of the individual shall be only the portrait of a deceased individual may appear on the currency. How weird. I'm starting to think that this might have gotten altered since we went live. It's right here. No coin issue under this may bear the image of a living former or current president. Okay, this is really interesting. I'm going to do this really quickly, and I swear to you, if we caught another live alter, how interesting. Because look, the reason I'm saying that is because look, I just read it to you right from the page. I don't waste too much time on this. It still says it right there, very, very specifically, that no coin issued in this may bear. It has to have where was it? No coin issued under this subsection may bear the image of a living former or current president, or of any deceased former president of 2 years period following the date of the death. So it's supposed to be like 2 years at least. And what I'm wondering is this under B. Sorry, bear with me. I'm interested in this. I can't type today. Okay, so this is the one we're looking for under C. That's a long way to do that. There we go. How interesting. I don't want to just have to scroll through this whole long thing and find it. But so what I'm pointing out to you guys, if you're just not following, is that this image says very specifically there that what it only seems to say on this one under E, which is really interesting. So what I'm wondering, which is the same point, by the way, it's the same reality of the coin, is that I'm wondering if while we were doing this, somebody jumped in there and tried to edit it, thinking that was a problem and didn't delete the other versions of it. Completely what's just in my head right now. Tell me what you guys think. Because this is the reality. I looked into this before we started. I was seeing if it said like updated or anything. Anyway, no waste. I'm realizing I'm short on time today, so let me get back to the point, Ryan. Let me do one more thing. Buy America Act. What? This is strange. Because this is the same page. Commonly referred. Weird. Okay, you tell me. I'm going to go back afterward. I don't want you to sit here while I go through this very long page. To me, this looks like something changed. Because that was the same thing from before. Any case. So, reiterating the point, it is, and what's even funnier is this is what it says here too. Somebody responded by going, "Hey, Grok, is that against the law?" Grok says, "Yes. U.S. law prohibits portraits of living persons on currency." Just funny to me that they're like, people love to try to do that. And then when they don't get this wrong, sure, they just ignore it. But don't trust Grok. The point I was going to make is that apparently Ian Carroll came out with a whole video saying, I'm admitting something. I don't, basically ditch Google, use AI. And look, that we had a whole conversation about this on an IMA panel. And I was very honest about it. It's something that is clearly, there is a value to it. You see me here and there use it. I was trying my best to get away from it. There are some times where it seems like there's value to it, mostly for me to kind of use it as a counterbalance from like a partisan view. But it's something that we need to be very, very, very skeptical about. And what's interesting is the last thing we should do is ditch this and go all in. We should use the tools in front of us and be very skeptical. Like you get a Google search, you blindly take it at face value. The AI is wrong all the time. So it's weird of this big push, very highly produced video from Ian Carroll going, use Grok and AI when all that's happening. It seems very strange to me. Question everything, guys. That's always how it has to be. But the point is that this is apparently illegal. So the fact that they're doing it anyway either means they don't care about the reality of the law or they're doing it just to get a response. I find that really interesting. And either one makes sense with where we are today, doesn't it? These people just don't seem to care at all about the reality of the law when it comes to what they want to accomplish. And it appears to be illegal. It's interesting. Now, on the Pfizer point of this and health in general, and all of this in particular very much connects with Israel because of all the different overlaps with Pfizer, specifically Pfizer's lab in Israel and all the different things with the injections, the parts of that were made in Israel, all the different examples of how this interconnects. And the Stargate point we'll get to. But this first, I just really think it's insane to me that this is happening yet again. Pfizer strikes a $70 billion deal with the U.S. to expand its mRNA empire. And this is where the whole Trump RX comes into play, by the way. And I think the good point, Sasha Latipova made this great point. Trump is a registered trademark in the United States and internationally owned mainly by the Trump organization and its affiliates. Meaning, to cut to the chase, if they're using Trump RX, they're getting money for that. Now, it's possible he waived it, but that doesn't seem to be the case. And I think that's really interesting. Overall, everything about this, whether it's a socialism point, whether it's a fascism point, whether it's a profiteering point, or the fact that he's literally fast-tracking you Pfizer drugs. Why is that anything MAGA or MAHA to anybody, unless those things both to you mean blindly support Trump? Here is what Brooke Jackson's lawyer had to say about this. And I found this interesting, as well as some follow-ups that I want you to see that continue to show you that. And by the way, let's not forget, we had this interview with Brooke Jackson on the 7th of May of 2025. Title, Meet the New Boss, same as the old boss. She was very adamant the fact that Trump has sided with Pfizer. Here's the tweet right here. Trump sides with Pfizer, April 28, 2025. And if you don't remember, we've had 4 interviews with her now. They'll be at the bottom of this article. First one, second one, third one, and this is the 4th one we're on right now. All of them are absolutely, completely unequivocal. You can watch the data, or rather look at the data, watch the interview. They're caught. And their argument at the end of the day is, well, we paid for the lie that we sold, or they paid us for the lie we sold, essentially paraphrasing. It's just, they're lying to you guys. Trump knows that. They are absolutely spitting in your face with every step like this. That's why more and more people are calling it out. Now, the Censorceptor points out, Pfizer's whistleblower, Brooke Jackson's lawyer, just rehashing what it says, I'll just play it for you, basically breaks down the reality and the nuance of where it currently is. And I think it's an informational point.
The case has become so complicated, I really don't even know how to explain it anymore. So the floor is yours. Tell us what's going on.
Well, I'm going to uncomplicate it for you a bit. So, a lot of people talk about the EUA and some other issues, but fundamentally, Pfizer contracted for a safe and effective vaccine for COVID-19. That is far from what they delivered. On top of that, they were supposed to, and we can talk about this in a minute, they were supposed to deliver this drug following current good manufacturing practices. It's right in the contracts. And they didn't do that either, and we can go into that issue. But what happened in the process of litigating this case is the federal government decided that this case somehow was contrary to the public health policy of the United States. And it came in and asserted that under the Biden administration.
Right, because knowing the truth of how they tried to kill you, is counter to their interests. I think that's pretty clear. But they conflate that with your interests. See, when they say American interest, they mean their interests. Not the same thing. The government is not this country.
And the judge dismissed it. So now it's on appeal. They had no good cause to dismiss Brooke Jackson's case. None whatsoever. They couldn't, there is a sort of a standard at DOJ in terms of when you would step in to dismiss one of these cases. They didn't meet any of those standards. They couldn't prove any good cause, but the judge went ahead and allowed the federal government to step in and dismiss the case and stop our litigation and stop our discovery against Pfizer just based on the federal government say so. We are still, and we were hopeful when the administration changed in January, that we would have a change in position within this administration. And certainly Bobby Kennedy knows all about the Pfizer fraud, and he is the client of the DOJ in this case. So we continue to appeal to Bobby and the administration to change a position on this case and let us do the work. We're willing to do the work for the American people to get the discovery and find out everything that Pfizer did.
Yeah, and what though?
Is that simple?
It's frustrating.
Yeah, it is. But what, are we missing the elephant in the room that he didn't? I mean, we're appealing to him. In other words, they're doing the same thing. I hate the soft footing when it comes to RFK Jr. Be honest about it. It makes me mad too. And I see all of his past amazing work that I still support too. He is, or his administration he's a part of, is doing the same thing Biden's administration did. They're not to continue to try to appeal to him means they've already stopped it, as Brooke points out. But you see how they frame the one side is they put an absolute stop to it and they ignored it. And then the second part was we're continuing to appeal RK Jr. as in somehow that's going to change. Why would it change? I hope so. Kills me though, right? I mean, Mary Tyler Bowden is calling this stuff out all the time, by the way. So here it continues. RFK Jr. knows, this is Sense Receptor pointing this out, that the COVID jabs constitute mass murder. Literally, he does. And yet this is still what's happening.
I'm going to let you go, Sasha, but before I do, I'm an attorney. I try to figure out ways to sue people like this. And, one of the frustrating things during this pandemic is that the PrEP Act, the CARE Act, and the 1986 VICA Vaccine Act have all bestowed broad immunity from liability under all of these actors. So
remember, this is while he was not in power.
They're getting away literally with murder, with mayhem, with mass murder. They're getting away with it because they have been given this bubble of the shield of immunity from liability. You have an expertise,
which still exists,
in corporate liability. As a corporate liability officer, do you see any obvious place where somebody like me can file a lawsuit and get redress for some of these illegal acts?
Yeah, so first of all, neither me nor my colleagues discourage anyone from doing just that, to just going after Pfizer because of all the fraud that they have committed. I think what the problem is we're all having, we don't know exactly what's going to crack that wall, but we have to attempt different ways. Now, yes, we can try going after Pfizer. I'm just saying, here's the lay of the land. This is the defense they're going to invoke. They already invoked it in Brooke Jackson's case. They're saying we did not defraud the government. We delivered the fraud that the government ordered. And that's in
which case, in Brooke.
That was the point I was referencing. That's the exact way it was said. How incredible is that?
Jackson.
In Brooke Jackson's in April, they filed motion to dismiss. So, and while, the case may be dismissed, it hasn't been dismissed, but let's say in the future it gets dismissed because of this. That admission alone is priceless. And we need to elicit these admissions in court. They need to tell us ultimately, through whatever method we're going to go after, ultimately they need to tell us it's an explicit US government policy to commit mass murder and genocide, or these were rogue actors, these people, Robert Kodlak, Peter Marks,
hired by Donald Trump,
Fauci, whoever, these specific individuals, they were rogue actors and acting outside of their authority.
Right. So At that now remember, now this is then, okay? Today, we've now had multiple deals with Pfizer. We've had the continuation of the COVID-19 mRNA shot from Pfizer. We've had the continual direction of the self-amplifying shots, the tri-amplifying shots, all of that. How do you make sense of that? Now, rightly so, someone in the chat points out like why we only seem to focus on Pfizer, or some people do. Now, that's not necessarily the case. This one point does hyper-focus on Pfizer for obvious reasons. It's Ventavia, which was their trial. But it's right to point out that Moderna is a very huge part of this conversation that I do argue gets less attention than Pfizer. Moderna, I think, is the more important element of the background research to this point, right? But except for the point that Moderna, this was like their first viable product, but I think that the background up until now, just from what I see, seems to be more prevalent, but overall, probably a lot more going on that I can see that I missed. But I think my point is that Bob Langer here, the article, the scientific co-founder of Moderna, was also the overlapping with Charles Lieber's work, both of which are a very important part of the technology, I think, is around the base of this that's going beyond the COVID shots. My point is that that's a huge part of all this. Pfizer was arguably the focal point when it came to the shots, largely Israel, an overlap, I think, in the way that Pfizer became the focal point of the shots that were given, but it was all the technology, right? It's important to think about, but I'll include this here. And then obviously, the last part, just Trump side with Pfizer after this conversation, by the way. Now, on Twitter, apparently they're censoring conversations around this. As Decentered News points out, they posted this and they got an age restriction in adult content. Seriously. They posted it. They write, Twitter quickly suppressed the post about Dr. Oz promoting the mRNA shots in 2020 and 2021 and his role in the $70 billion Pfizer deal, marking it as, quote, age-restricted adult content that, quote, might not be appropriate for people under 18. Seriously? That's crazy. So this is 3 minutes, but this is the post in general. Yesterday's press conference announcing Trump's $70 billion deal. Says you were the mastermind of everything, and without the brilliant way that you designed the whole thing, we wouldn't be able to make it happen. Yeah, great. Thanks, Trump, for the deadly shots. But the point is, as always, suppressing content around this conversation, still to this day, the Pfizer COVID-19 vaccine conversation. Most people pretend like that's not happening on this platform still. Brooke Jackson's interview we just had in May, same old, same old. Now, Rob Schneider came out as well. Here's Mr. Sausage posting this out on September 30th after that discussion. These are the released Pfizer documents with the thousands of side effects that they desperately tried to have sealed from you for 75 years. I mean, this is like the point about the stuff we discussed in the beginning. Can you even imagine that we're still pretending, some people, that them deliberately trying publicly to suppress for 75 years thousands of side effects? Like we don't then now know exactly what that means? Are we still like they're not pretending like there was some different reason for it? No, 75 years. In what world does it ever make sense? Let alone all of the things they pretend weren't actually happening. Everyone sees this other than the control structure, just like Zionism, just like the two-party illusion. Guys, people see this stuff. We're like cascading through these constant lies because they force you back into it with everything that happens. It's a long list. Rob Schneider sees it. That's my point, guys. Think about how many people are calling this out right now. President Trump, he said, fumbled bigly, giving $70 billion to the criminal enterprise known as Pfizer. Now, foreign policy, this is just interesting to me. Rob Lee says the U.S. will provide, this is the Wall Street Journal's right here, U.S. to provide Ukraine with intelligence for missile strikes deep inside of Russia, right? Because that's the end of the war. That's you facilitating the end of this. By the way, that's always what's been going on. Hasn't stopped. Narratives were shifting. That's the same thing that's been going on from Biden to Trump. The same thing. As Russia will tell you. But who cares about the narrative? Let's all pretend like he's saving the world. #winning. This is the continuation of the agenda like we told you would happen. I didn't know for sure. I'm not psychic. I just said based on the reality of the lie of the two-party illusion, the fact that both sides have this interest, I bet you that doesn't stop. Same with Israel. Despite all the screaming of all the partisans that told you we were black-pilled, and here we are. Is this World War III, Alex Jones? Probably, like it is every other day he has a story like this. But the problem is that this isn't new. So as Russia stands up and goes, we might have a response, everybody clutches their pearls and goes, oh, World War III is coming. Certainly could, and that would be the U.S. is driving this. But that's not what that typically means, as Russia's always saying we have a right to respond and usually does so in a way that's not belligerent. And that's not to say that they're not. Maybe that's just the way they're acting to make sure you think that The point is, it is the way they're acting, regardless of how you want that intent to shine over. So when they go to the United Nations or whatever else or demonstrate, the point is that they continue to drive this, and it gets called World War III for the interest of the power structures, probably Russia too. And it simply highlights the fact that the U.S. will provide Ukraine with intelligence for long-range missile strikes on Russia, energy infrastructure, American officials said. As the Trump administration weighs sending Kiev powerful weapons that could put in range more targets in Russia, President Trump recently signed off on allowing this to happen. Right. And I said, is this what looks like to end the war on day one? Alex Jones asked me to ask for you guys. Obviously, I'm kidding. Funny how someone down here genuinely thought that Alex asked me to ask this. My point was clearly he's the one that said it was over, 3 months ago and more than once since then? Clearly not. Worth reflecting on things like that. Now, Venezuela. This is from, I believe this was today, or at the very least reporting about it happening yesterday. U.S. strikes another boat off Venezuelan coast. There's been zero evidence presented at this point. At this moment, why in the world? I mean, how do we not have some kind of international entity here? This is against the law in an international sense. They don't have the legal reality to execute people in the middle of the international law, in the middle of the ocean, maritime law. They don't have the legal reality to make those decisions in the middle of the ocean. They do, and they always have, but to do it so publicly, repeatedly, and make the case that we can just execute you. If this was, let's say, in the U.S. waters, of course, we would argue, regardless of whether they're an American or not, if you actually understand the Constitution, that everybody has due process. The reality, though, is that international waters, I mean, you could argue they can get away with it easier in that regard, right? They were coming at the shore and they were going to do something bad. People would it'd be easier to take because they have the legal reality to make those decisions, even though I would still argue it would be against the law. To do so in the middle of the ocean, in what world does that make sense to anybody? If China was popping off American ships because they claimed they were doing something without proving it, what do you think the United States government would do? If it was anybody other than Israel doing it, seeing as they do that all the time in Palestine, they would make a huge deal about it. So what does that show you? They're trying to create that same kind of allowance that we can do whatever we want, whenever we want, wherever we want, because we're the good guys. Even though it couldn't be farther from the truth in regard to what they do. Not that they're the counterbalance to some other bad. I believe there are probably other people doing better than them, but the reality is, regardless of the other, what they're doing is bad. They're breaking the law. They're murdering people for no justification. They're acting in things that are against the American interest, but, so what do you call that? This is a crime. And all they're making clear is they're going to keep doing it. And they claim it's a war. That's what this is now, a war. U.S. military carried out another strike on a boat operating in the Caribbean. Officials deemed to be a narco trafficking vessel. And this was on Friday, so this was today. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth announced this on a social media post because apparently that's the way everything happens now. The strike killed all 4 people who were on board. And no witnesses. Now we don't know for sure, right? The attack marks at least the 4th known U.S. military strike in the Caribbean since the beginning of September. I mean, in any other context, outside of them building this narrative, which I'll make clear in a second, wouldn't you normally do something different? Go to the country and say, hey, this is a problem. Would you join? But no, Venezuela is the bad guy. Therefore, they're creating the construct, even if you think that's the case. And they're just executing people with no justification, with no verification. The attack marks the 4th that they've, beginning in September, that they've attacked, targeting the boats of the administration claims they're affiliated with drug cartels that the U.S. has designated terrorist organizations. See how abstract? So we decide that's a terrorist organization when it's not, by every verifiable point. It's a gang, sure. And whether they're provably controlling the Venezuelan government is so childishly, anything's possible. Is there any evidence to back that up? And if you could, the evidence that would require to prove that they're running the Venezuelan government, and the idea that they should very much prove that at some point, this is going to kick into international reaction, some legal action in this country. And just like every other case, what are they going to say? National security. They'll never have to prove any of this, despite the fact that they're legally required to. And so that they're going terrorist organization, right? So we did that. They're terrorists now. Now, when anybody else does anything in this area, we'll claim that's the group that's doing it. Therefore, now we can do whatever we want. And nobody can ask us to prove anything, even though they're required to. It's like the broken logic they have about don't you recognize how all these things intersect? They're just using the excuse they have. Oh, invasion from the southern border. It's all Tren de Aragua. Because, and Venezuela as a state actor And Biden allowed that, so he's working with them, even though it was a long-term, slow immigration point. But that seems so clumsy. It didn't make any sense. And now they're going, oh, now we got it. Now we're going to claim that they're running the Venezuelan government. Therefore, it all ties together. It only took them 4 months to work that out. It's just like Venezuela. It's just like Israel. They lie, and eventually they go, what about if we connect these two and we lie about that? If we shine the light on it. Now do you buy it? Like we didn't watch you do that for 4 months. Anyway, it says Hegseth posted on Twitter on Friday that President Trump ordered that he ordered this. That's important. He directed the lethal kinetic strike on a narco-trafficking vessel affiliated with designated terrorist organizations. They didn't say Tren de Aragua, mind you. That's what they're pointing to in the larger justification. But when they actually state what they did, they only say designated terrorist organization. Because that's the legal, DTO. Like they use that in a lot of this conversation. The attack took place in international waters just off Venezuela's coast, which means they don't have jurisdiction. The move that could further inflame tensions between the U.S. and Venezuela, the point is that now this is becoming something they're going to act upon, like any country would. Maduro said on Tuesday that he's preparing to declare a state of emergency to protect his country in the event of an attack by the U.S. military. I hate states of emergency in any context, but the point is you understand why that logic, like if they're not trafficking drugs and it's not them running the Venezuelan government, then you understand why any government, any country would be like, okay, you just killed 4 people full of boats and or boats full of people and we have to do something about that. So they're acting. But again, consider that maybe what they're saying is true. But you should absolutely demand that they present evidence to make their case, which I bet you my life, they never will. Hegseth did not say which terrorist organization the boat was allegedly affiliated with, but added that our intelligence, without a doubt, confirmed that this vessel was trafficking narcotics. The people on board were narco-terrorists, and they were operating as a known narco-trafficking transit route. So they were in the ocean, and we don't like Venezuela, so we bombed them, and everything else fits together. The real clear thing here, guys, our intelligence, without a doubt, you mean except for the other 75 times in the last 6 months that your intelligence turned out to be false? Or go back to Bolton and Olympic mines. Go back to the claims about Iran that we just watched. I mean, you realize how often they keep saying they're wrong. Or it's not they're wrong, let's be clear. They're deliberately they're lying to you. Just like this. Because the point is, let's just say that even this was accidents. I think it's very deliberate, but let's just say it was. Well, they're going to go, well, they were terrorists. They need you to sell that narrative because that's what stops it from being a crime, right? So our intelligence says, national security. I mean, they know how this works, guys. They've been doing it for decades now. And it says the administration, Hegseth did not say which group, but it goes on to say he alleged the boat was transporting substantial amounts of narcotics headed to America to poison our people. Now, this may not connect for some people, but those that have been doing this long enough and recognize how completely immersed our government is with drug trafficking, and I mean more than one intelligence organization, or even just the government itself, like the White House, executive branch, or whatever, that they wouldn't recognize an opportunity to take that. It's valuable. You understand? They would take it. In every other case you could find, they don't dispose of these things. They take it. They use it. You may not think so. That's my point. People, that's not true. Do your due diligence. And the idea that they would not try to successfully seize those things, I find hard to believe, which suggests to me that that's not what's happening, on top of 50 other points. And this is why they said this, by the way, headed to America to poison our people. That's what they're using to argue defense at first, until now they just went the other direction, even though they don't stop and think that challenges their original narrative. They're not that smart, apparently. The administration has previously argued that other boats, if struck, were also headed to the United States, necessitating urgent military action. You see, no one's ever tried to argue that the delivery of drugs was the immediate wartime act. That's why they said, people are dying, drugs all over the place, therefore it's an imminent emergency. I mean, it's just embarrassing. It's insulting to your intelligence that they have to execute these overlapping patches and emergencies to force in something that doesn't connect without those points. Do you feel it's an emergency military threat? People that are allegedly, without proving it, delivering drugs, maybe to the United States? I mean, you have to realize how insane that is. Even if it was, that doesn't give them the right to bomb these people. But overall, I think they're making this up. It's the national defense, or rather even more likely the Bethlehem doctrine, like where the preemptive self-defense. It's the Israel, UK, US broken logic. Legal experts and lawmakers. It says the administration has previously argued that other boats that it struck were also headed to the United States. It says, however, at least one boat struck by the U.S., the first one we talked about, was already turning around. You see, so this already blew up in their face. They were already turning around, so legally, there's no way that it was an imminent threat. They were going back the other direction, and you killed them before they can get away. But they still argued it. They still said defense, right? Legal experts and lawmakers on both sides of the aisle have questioned the legality of the strikes. The Pentagon said Trump had determined that the U.S. is in an armed conflict with the drug cartels. So this is what's interesting. You're now arguing that the cartels, not even Tren de Aragua, not even Venezuela, but the cartels, a broader claim, the war on terror, war on drugs mashed together, right? Kind of always was. Over here, you're now arguing that you're at war, right? So Congress never declared anything, and that is the legal reality here. But see, they're trying to act like it's an imminent threat. But so now you're defending yourself. Well, no, you can't argue that with what's happening anymore. So they had to shift it into an actual war. So we're being attacked in general. We have to go after them now with a cartel or the cartels. See, this is what's interesting from a legal perspective. I don't think you can even declare war on a non-state actor. In a broad, like war on drugs, for example, but that's not like a, reality of the league, like an actual kinetic warfare point. We're going to talk about this more on Monday. But it says, describing the U.S. military strikes as part of an armed conflict suggests that the attacks are part of a longer-term campaign and not just a one-off in strikes in self-defense. See, they're showing their hand. They're proving their false logic from before and just shoving it into the next argument. Too late. We're past it now. You can't get me for that one. We're on this one. It's like we're in kindergarten. In this post on Twitter, Hegseth said, these strikes will continue until the attacks on the American people are over. The attacks? He's an armed conflict with drug cartels. They have designated as terrorist organizations. See, anybody they want to use, that's just like what they're doing is they're taking the same agenda that they're like any ISIS, they pretend are there. Now they're going after them because ISIS or war on terror, and they're just being clumsy with it. Because these aren't the junior team, I think, all of them. Overall, you're just jamming it into the next conversation, right? Now we are at war with terrorists and drug cartels and smugglers, unlawful combatants is what they're calling it. So the peace president, right? Well, as we showed you before, the U.S. Navy has now killed what? Now it's 21 in deadly strikes. Venezuela is giving guns to civilians. And what is the U.S. going to do? See, they're arming them. They're all terrorists, because that's a smart thing to say after you were killing innocent people in boats, or at the very least, anybody killing drug traffickers in boats that were not your legal reality on the coast of Venezuela. What do you think the U.S. would do, even if they were actually, what if, any context you want to add there to make a drug overlap? They would be freaking out about Venezuela being present in the first place. This will be used to claim their terrorism, even though the terrorists are the ones killing people in boats. Now, interestingly, surprise, surprise, I know you're shocked to find out this lazy-eyed sociopath, Stephen Miller, is taking a leading role in the strikes on Venezuela. Why? Because this is another Israeli agenda, in my opinion. Stephen Miller, the White House Deputy Chief of Staff, has played a leading role in directing U.S. strikes against suspected Venezuelan drug boats. Suspected. According to 3 people familiar with the situation, at times his role has superseded that of Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, and National Security Advisor, because that makes sense, right? This random appointee, Stephen Miller, he's the one who's superseding the Secretary of State, even a blindly ardent supporter of Israel that Rubio is. I think you need to start asking yourself what's really happening here, guys. I mean, this guy is of all of them, he is a diehard Israel first Zionist. The strikes on Venezuelan boats allegedly carrying narcotics, which the administration has claimed were necessary because interdiction did not work. Is that how that normally works, though, right? What if in this country they say, well, we tried to intervene with children on drugs, just get rid of them, deport them, kill them all, because interdiction doesn't work, right? I mean, obviously the term is a little bit different in this context. As we're saying, where was it? So this would the action of prohibiting, forbidding, right? Well, I mean, you could also take it in the meaning being like intervention, but the point is that so trying to stop it from happening is not working, so kill them. Yeah, that's very Trump logic, a very U.S. government logic, rather. But he says, they've been orchestrated through the Homeland Security Council, the HSC, which Miller leads as a Homeland Security advisor. Right, so the advisor to this council is now superseding the Secretary of State. Yeah, no big deal there. Miller empowered the HSC earlier this year to become its own entity in Trump's second term. Yeah, nothing weird about this. Israel-led kind of group overtaking the Secretary of State. A notable departure from previous administrations where it was considered part of the National Security Council and ultimately reported to the National Security Advisor, otherwise known as Marco Rubio. Right. So now, just if this is confusing, a situation or a position that had otherwise reported directly to Marco Rubio is now seemingly telling Marco Rubio what to do, at least according to this situation. And I argue, if you stand back and look at the things he's involved with, he seems to be making a lot more decisions than a person in his position should. Miller's role also opens a window into the dubious legal justification that has been advanced for the strikes, which has been a matter of deep controversy amid allegations it amounted to extrajudicial murder. I mean, guys, this is not allegations. That's exactly what this was. Regardless of what you claim, there was no process. There was no investigation. They just executed all of them. So let's just say they were carrying drugs. What if they had his son with them? What if it wasn't drugs? What if it was medicine that was looking like, you could argue 1,000 different possibilities. You know what I think? I don't think they care. If you want my gut opinion, they're killing innocent people just to make a narrative. That's the kind of people we're dealing with. If you don't think that's possible, I don't think you're paying attention today. Since the start of the Venezuelan campaign, White House officials have sought to justify the strikes internally and externally by claiming Trump was exercising the Article 2 powers, which allows the president to use incorrect, by the way, before you even finish the sentence, incorrect, in self-defense and limited engagements. The point is that if you're talking about in the country, if you're talking not some foreign base, this is a bastardization of what these things mean. If there was an invasion in this country, then that would be the reality. Everything else represents empire, not the reality of the republic it originally was supposed to be. But he says, which allows the president to use military force in self-defense. The self-defense argument, of course, revolves around Trump's designation that they were a terrorist organization, Tren de Aragua, a claim advanced by Miller, of course, in order to defend the deportation of dozens of Venezuelans earlier this year under a totally different thing, the Alien Enemies Act. Right? So now they're just kind of patching these things together. The reality of that was still against the law because they still were afforded due process regardless of where they were from. The administration claimed that Tren de Aragua had infiltrated the regime of Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro. And so the presence of the cartel's members in the U.S. amounted to a predatory incursion by a foreign nation, allowing for the deportation of Venezuelan nationals, right? Of course, the problem was that none of that made any sense and you couldn't prove that. On top of the fact that Maduro was already willing to work with you guys and you pretended he wasn't. And that came out proven. But it says it's a drug cartel that is running Venezuela, Miller told reporters. You know, aside from all the very ridiculous, like cartoonish level lies he puts out, like we won a 7-0 Supreme Court ruling that was literally 0-7. It's just embarrassing, guys. And people, it's only the blind followers that go along with people like this. But he knows that. And he's laughing at you when he does it. You're the ones being used by him as much as you pretend you're on the same team. White House earlier this month said as he characterized Maduro as the head of the cartel. It's not a government. It's a drug cartel. Narco-trafficking organization is running Venezuela. Sure, it's nice and fun to just lay out these kind of claims. You can prove any of that? No, they never do. As well as the point I make every time. How about you take a quick glance over at Colombia, which traffics the majority of cocaine in the world, but you don't care about that because they're an ally. Or uses the country next to them to facilitate that, and they're also one of the U.S. ally. But over here, even if there is drug trafficking, it's a fraction of what happens over here. But see, it's not about the drugs, guys. It's either about the long-term agenda of Venezuela for any number of reasons, politically, and just hatred probably, but also lithium and gold and all the other things they want, oil. But it says the administration has yet to provide concrete evidence. Shocker. A divided 3-judge panel at the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Fifth Circuit on September 2nd ruled that deportations under the Alien Enemies Act, the same one that used the Tren de Aragua claim, were unlawful because the administration had not met the high burden of, wait for it, showing Tren de Aragua was in fact an arm of the Maduro regime. So they've lost in court more than once for that claim, and now they're just using it again. See, this is the whole ignore the courts, double down, lie. This is the Mark Andreessen, Karp, Thiel, Curtis Yarvin sort of like oligarchs winning against the bad oligarchs, Machiavellian mindset that they're pushing on everybody. And it is clearly absorbed into this cabinet without question. The reality, guys, they know that it's already been challenged and already been put down. They're using it right in front of you. They're claiming Venezuela is just a Tren de Aragua actor and that's invading our country, and the drugs they're trafficking will be a threat if they're going to our country, which we can't. I mean, it just becomes ridiculous. Overall, they lied about this. We can prove that, and they're just lying about it again now. as well. And this is just the report. U.S. is engaging in a formal armed conflict with terrorist drug cartels. Just skip that for time. That's the same point. Now, a quick overlap, which I do want to do quickly in regard to immigration. Just kind of showing you that, I mean, keep that point in mind of the Tren de Aragua overlap and the lie therein. First of all, just in case we forgot this, another Supreme Court ruling, by the way, or just a federal court ruled, which we shouldn't need to rule again and again and again because it is reality of the Constitution. They ruled that non-citizens lawfully present in the United States, and by the way, even unlawfully, just in case we don't understand that by now, actually have the same free speech rights as the rest of the citizens. Meaning you can't deport people because based on First Amendment protected speech, such as criticizing Israel. But let's be clear again, guys. Regardless of what this ruling even said, that's people down below are like in this response or picking apart, like, look what the judge wrote. It's irrelevant. It's not based on this ruling. The reality of it, you can go back to every Supreme Court ruling before it. You can go back to reading the Constitution for yourself and understanding the idea of what an inherent God-given right is and the idea of a republic that's created to instill those values in the world. But we can only enforce this idea in these boundaries, which is that people have inherent God-given rights, whether or not they're here illegally. It's just so frustrating that we have to keep talking about this. I always will, though, because it's important. So my point is, even additionally, it's not just here legally, it's anybody. Now, again, within the illegal part, I've said every time, there are a few exceptions to certain things, but due process is not one of them. So the reality is, as anyone cared to look, and the facts they already knew, we've been telling you guys from day one. Take note of the fake free speech warriors out there trying to convince you that people, even people here legally, somehow don't have constitutional rights because they're not born here. It's so gross how those kind of people who act like they're the most American out there are the least informed about their own country and their own rights. Funny enough, somebody commented right beneath this going, "You're so dumb. That's not true." And I said, my God, your lack of constitutional literacy is astounding. And he probably went and looked it up for himself and deleted his post. Instead of going, "Hey, man, I'm sorry. You were right. And that's crazy. I should have looked at it." Of course not. Not how the partisan game works today. Trump from Vanity Fair, August, but important to highlight. This is from a while ago, though, 2019. Report, Trump happily employing undocumented workers while ICE rounds them up. Nothing new. Same thing today, as he already let out as we got to this part 2 of his second administration. Just thinking about this, guys. Think about how insulting this is. And terrifying moment when ICE agents hold family at gunpoint and smash their car window with a baby inside. Now, this is a frustrating point. The whole thing about it, the reality of it, to do it quick, is that the guy was here illegally. Now, he was going through the process and just showed up for one of these court hearings in regard to leaving the country. And by all accounts, in court, even the court, he was participating. For whatever reason, they bum rushed his car outside of the court after he just went in and left and demanded he get out of the car without a warrant, without information, and bust the window in, put the baby at risk in the car. All of it was unnecessary. Now, that's not to say he wasn't here illegally. The point was, even the court will attest to the fact that he was participating in the process of removing him. They didn't need, like, they could have come and knocked on his door and been like, "Hey, we're here to expedite that." Different situation instead of bum rushing him. And by the way, without a warrant, without identifying yourselves, all of those are against the law, period. It's amazing we even debate these things today. And the reality is that they put these people at risk. Hurt people in the process, American citizens. They do it every single time. Apple, of course, removed their ICE tracking app after Trump administration say they threaten officers. And this is what's so frustrating. Do you realize? Like, look, let's just even say, fine, remove the app of somehow tracking them in their current location, even though I don't know, don't they identify themselves with uniforms and sirens? And yeah, but how dare we know where they are? Like, it just doesn't make any sense to me. But fine, let's just even say you think that that's dangerous for them, even though the job is dangerous, and that's the point. The idea that they're legally required to identify themselves, their name, their badge number, and always providing a justification for why they're doing what they're doing, warrants and so on. None of them are doing this right now. And crazy enough, people like Noam and Bondi and Trump and Heggs, all of them are acting like that doesn't matter because Democrats. They're either that small-minded and stupid and uninformed of their own country, or they're using that to lie to people that are. It's insane. And the reality is they're breaking the law every day they're doing this. And they're giving people the justification legally to be able to be like, "I'm not complying until I know what's going on." Maybe you're a rapist in a police vest, which has already happened, by the way. And the fact that you're not proving this to me, I'm going to drive away. And they open fire. It's happened twice now. This is so far outside the realm of what anybody would expect in this country. You go back, if you went back before Trump's last administration, You realize what they would have said about this? Like if it was happening under Biden's administration, can you imagine what the Republicans would say about what they're doing to their families? Anyway, the bottom line is they removed the app under the guise that they're being threatened. The point is that their narrative for that is that Democrats are attacking them all over, even though you can prove, if you care to look, that it's basically been a low point for that conversation. It's not even true. The 1,000% increase, all of it stems back to Tom Homan's claim on that program. I've shown you this twice now. Right? His mumbling answer apparently is the only thing we get. Freedom. Oh, okay. On top of that, a journalist who was trying to film them, of course, you can't do that. You're putting us at risk, gets hurt, tackled, and has severe injuries. Hospitalized after simply trying to photograph while they were doing this. Well, technically, it was in an elevator that he was trying to join. They literally threw him down. I mean, what Democrat, right? Or whatever your nonsensical argument is, this is a crime in and of itself. On top of that, these are agents working for you and using your tax dollars. And this is what they're doing to journalists. Very Gaza-esque at this point. I shouldn't even say that, because what they're dealing with is a nightmare on top of a nightmare. This is a benign situation. My point is that you can get the normalization of that kind of violence, or just any kind of violence against anybody for that matter. That's where this is going. In no way to belittle the reality of what they're dealing with. On top of that, another ruling that you might have seen, Trump targeting of pro-Palestinian campus activists for deportation, unlawful, another judge finds. Now, just before we get into the game, these have been Republican and Democrat judges, despite Miller screeching about a judicial coup and radical left activists. These are Republican and Democrat judges on multiple cases going back from the beginning. And they just ignore the Republican ones, including the Supreme Court, by the way. What this is saying, I'll include it, read it for yourself, is that they have now deemed what we were saying accurate. And we already knew this. They were using unlawful actions to remove people who were legally in this country. And it's the same thing. It's the whole overlap with the Tren de Aragua point. Like, not the same story. My point is the whole conversation is built on lies. And guess what? They're still doing it. Now, this one blew me away, actually. But I shouldn't say that, because I expected. It's funny how they're screaming about politically driven judges, and then you get an action like this. Judge upholds final deportation order for Garcia. And of course, Breitbart even. Well, I will give them credit. At least they say alleged, because you can quite literally prove these aren't true. MS-13 gangbanger. They have proven in court this isn't true. You know how you know that even more? Because if you read what they actually did in court, they don't even argue that anymore. All they're trying to argue now is that he's not in danger to go back to El Salvador. And I can't even tell if that means the torture prison or just sending him there. Don't forget, it was Trump's administration in 2019, I believe, that allowed him to stay under the threat that, or the claim he was in danger. That was Trump's administration. And then they gave him the withholding of removal. And that's why he was still here. And Trump go, oh my God, terror. They make up the whole fake story about it. The reality, though, is that to quickly go over this whole section, to take a long time to go over, I'm going to revisit this in another show, all of it, is that what we're talking about here is that they're ultimately deeming him not a threat to be sent back to El Salvador, therefore saying, okay, now we can send him back. And that's the only thing being discussed. And understand, my point is that in these proceedings, 3 times, if not 4, the judges have laughed, thrown out, said claims that I've never even heard judges speak like, saying that these things were lies. The human trafficking, that they manufactured a thing that's literally impossible. Or the fact that all the claims about gang members, all of it's based on hyperbole, provenly false claims, people that were fired for corruption. I mean, and the bottom line is, regardless of any of that, there's no evidence. It's all hearsay. And yet, here's the Homeland Security Post. After all they get is the ruling that he's allowed to go back to El Salvador, which, by the way, was never even really disputed that he was eventually going to be deported. It was the withholding of removal that Trump's administration gave him because he was at risk of being hurt in El Salvador, right? That was the only point. And so all they're saying is, well, he's not in danger anymore, regardless of what you think about that, and saying, okay, send him back then. And they're disputing, that's the wrong place, or maybe just to keep him here because he's got family here now. But either way, now they're just sending it. They're claiming that that's going to happen now. And they say, with today's ruling, Kilmar Abrego Garcia's final order of removal stands. Okay, that we can agree on. That's it. They say this MS-13 gang member, human trafficking, domestic abuser, and child predator will never be loose on America again. Child predator? You know what they're saying? They're literally using a false the claim of his son that was going with them in the car while they were driving people to work. They're just so shockingly dishonest. Or the human trafficker claim. because he was working with other people in the car that were being brought to the place he worked at. You could prove this. But they claim because they brought people across state lines, that's a human trafficking. They're deliberately misinforming you, knowing what those things mean. Or MS-13, which has been laughed out of court. Trump saying he's got tattoos that he literally does not. I mean, it's just outrageous where we are, but these people still push this stuff. I was watching, what's that guy, the Misfit Patriot, one of the dumbest people on the internet, out there pushing back on claims like this in, the Timcast discussion. It's insane to look at the false certainty that people have about things that you can quite literally prove using their very court documents presented by Trump's administration that they don't know what they're talking about. But even this, no matter how much we've done, people will still go, oh, you're just a Democrat, whatever. Blind ignorance. But if you want to go back to the very first show we did on April 22nd, I include every one of these court documents that prove that these alone, there's more that's come out since then. These alone will prove to you, if you watch the show and go through and read them for yourself, that they're lying to you. It's elementary, guys, but here we are. It's just incredible. So Glenn, on top of some of this, he adds, or this fire account reports, breaking today, a federal district court in Massachusetts issued a ruling rebuking of Trump administration's attempts to deport lawfully present non-citizens for protected pro-Palestinian speech. As the court explained, we are not, and we must not become, a nation that imprisons and deports people because we are afraid of what they might have to tell us. Good. It's just like amazing we even have to say this out loud. And Glenn says, I've read countless First Amendment judicial rulings in my life, but I've never read one as scathing as this decision by a Reagan-appointed federal judge, Judge William Young, on Trump and Rubio's, quote, full-throated assault on free speech. By punishing Israel critics with immigration law. See, this is when we get to the Israel part, guys. That's why this is so relevant. That's what's driving this. Is that America first? The court's finding that Trump, Rubio, and Cristian have been aggressively assaulting core free speech. Core free speech rights for Israel isn't confined to things like deporting students for op-eds about Israel. The court says they use anti-Semitism as an excuse to suppress speech in general. There you go. Now, it's not because the judge says it. It's because it's patently obvious. It's objective. They're just finally, people are starting to call this out. Here, Glenn points to another ruling. This one says 300 students are being barred from registering for courses at Northwestern University because they refuse to take anti-Semitism courses. That's America first, apparently. One of the first, and by the way, regardless of whether it's about anti-Semitism, it's being pushed by Israel for the way that they use that conversation. And in any case, the point is the idea that you're saying even if it's racism, you're allowed to think what you want. In what world we argue? I mean, that's what the right would make fun of about the left. Right? They're right now saying racism isn't even a real thing because that's how inverted it's all gotten. It does exist. The point, though, is that you have this happening and they're literally using that to manipulate speech while claiming that the left it's so completely broken. I think both sides have a complete inability at the team sport level to self-reflect. This is one of the worst free speech attacks in Trump admin's imposition of expanded campus hate speech codes. One of the worst free speech attacks is Trump's imposition of expanded campus hate speech codes that punish American students and faculty for Israel views. He uses the whole funding element, which, by the way, in and of itself is a problem, federal funding in general, but that doesn't change the reality. Just like the FCC point with Carr, you pressured it, it happened. It's the Supreme Court's ruled on this many times. You're responsible. It's a free speech issue. Northwestern students are barred from registering if they refuse ADL's created pro-Israel propaganda course. Remember that before we get to the ADL point. You know, the very bombastic lie that the FBI in any way broke apart with the ADL. One last point. ICE arrested a U.S. citizen twice during Alabama construction site raids. Now he's suing them, right? Twice. See, what this needs to prove to you is that he's there with brown skin and they grabbed him. They did it twice because there's not warrants. They're not doing anything other than profiling and scooping people up, many of which get caught in the mix, like we saw in the beginning. The vast majority of people sent to Venezuela, El Salvador, were people that were not criminals, most of which were here legally. Most of them are still in El Salvador, guys. Think how crazy that is. So this is an American citizen, this is an American citizen with his ID right in front of you. And he has been arrested twice for the same thing because they're not doing their job. They're just grabbing people that are brown. I guess for some people, that doesn't seem to matter. I think that speaks for itself. But for those of us that care about constitutional rights, that actually America first, this should matter. Now, 2 quick points on Epstein. In case you'd missed the whole overlap of the shutdown, Mike Johnson shuts down the White House, shuts down the House until September to block voting on the Epstein files. Now, he did basically say that. But the overlapping point, you could argue it's for plenty of other things. They're blaming the Democrats. I think that's why they want to frame it that way. So it's not, so it feels like they don't want Republicans going, did the Republicans just shut down the government to hide the Epstein files? But it would be both of them if you understand the real picture here. Just one more point. Epstein survivor Juliet Rose Bryan says, I've decided to join whistleblower Maria Farmer in the U.S. courts to hold the U.S. accountable for ignoring her 1996-2006 reports of Epstein crimes to the FBI. Hear that, Kash Patel? Things that they're hiding from. All Epstein survivors, come join me, she says. Now, I don't know, I'm not in the business of validating people's claim, in that context. Like if this came to something that was being used to like put people in prison, and like outside of a dead Epstein, like it's worth us to, make sure. At this point, my point is simply saying this is that she's making a case for how she was abused. It's something we should consider, as all with all the rest of it. The bottom line is it's okay to be skeptical, right? But as like any other conversation, I think decorum is important. I'm only saying any of that because I think it's important that we, in any, like Israel in the beginning of the rape allegations. I've said this many times. The amount of pushback we got for just going, well, I'm going to verify these things was so incredible. And I get it. People get emotional, but that's what we always have to do. But I do agree this is important, that people should be coming up, joining her, Maria, talking about because these are things that are being broadly ignored under the guise that they're fighting for them, right? They're saying, I'm protecting people like her. They're going, we'll release it. I want this released, and they don't care. They're blocking FOIA requests for these people. This is just so shockingly corrupt. And again, this is, if you think about it for a second, if you're nonpartisan, or at least not blindly team sport partisan, you look at stuff like this and you go, yeah, that's crazy. So that means somebody, probably all of them in this current administration, just like all of them in the other administration, are doing this. What does that show you? There's a problem here, right? And so, so people just blind themselves to this issue and high five about their team. Now, overlapping this with Israel, which I think is very important. Max Blumenthal had an important update. The New York Times has corroborated his report, and I'll show you both of them, that the ultra-Zionist billionaire Robert Shillman canceled a major donation to Turning Point USA just days before Charlie Kirk's killing. So remember, the overarching point of all of this, and it says, as in the past, the Times did not credit him with the work as typical. Oh, wait. Hold on. Oh, that's weird. I guess I've lost this from over there. This is about Venezuela. I don't know how I did that. I guess I didn't lose the highlighting. Anyway, the point here is that he got funding clearly from Zionists, from Israel, and he started having a change of mind. As Candace, as Tucker, as plenty of people have now very, very clearly verified, despite all the screeching lies of Zionists as usual, he was changing his opinion. Now, who's to say to what degree and how, but he was. It's pretty clear. He was saying things about Israel he'd never really pointed out before, and Candace Owens was saying he was considering changing his faith. There's all sorts of different points out there. And then he got kind of a, as I say, a come to Jesus meeting, probably the wrong term there, but that's what I would use, like in not even religious in context, meaning like, you got to come talk to us about this, right? We have to discuss where going forward, like what this is going to be, meaning that they're upset with what he was doing. We have to change that, right? That's kind of what that term can mean. And so this was the first one. Charlie Kirk refused Netanyahu funding offer and was frightened by pro-Israel forces before his death. Now, they were trying to say, hey, you're doing the wrong things. You're saying the wrong things. They invited him to this weird meeting with Bill Ackman where he felt like he was being pressured and lied to. He was being threatened. Right. And so the point was they then offered him this huge amount of money he turned down. And then he died. Now, so the point has always been that he has, this is verifiable, he had the most influential position for the most influential part of the demographic in the United States around the battleground that is Israel influence. And they're losing. And he started to change sides. So whether you want to do the math on whether that makes sense, it does, but you can decide whether you think it happened. The government like that's assassinated Americans and others many, many, many times, whether they would do that in order to shut down the conversation and be able to claim forever that he was your martyr. It's worth considering at the very least. That's the point. Question everything. So this is simply reporting that they have now, New York Times has corroborated that, yes, there was a major pull of funding right? Because of what Charlie Kirk was doing. And let's not forget, now after he moved, so they dropped the funding after he didn't accept the new thing, right? Then he dies. Ben Shapiro and his team sort of step into running the campus push and all that. His wife takes over, and boom, they get a massive amount of new funding from Zionists. That's exactly what happened. I mean, I don't know how a detective would be the focal point of his investigation. Milo even points out something I thought was interesting. Now, I wasn't even going to show you this because I thought this was what Max was sharing right there, because I didn't want to get into the personal, right? But I found this actually interesting for a reason. Is that ultimately Max shares this. Candace says, this is the man that funds Laura Loomer, by the way. Keep in mind that Laura was attacking Charlie just before he died, and she now demands that we stop investigating Charlie's murder. Who was directing her to do that? And she responded with this very long, weird post. It's not even worth, I mean, you can read it, but I simply said, the lady doth protest too much, methinks, which basically means that she's, giving way too many details, but it suggests that she's hiding something or lying. But the point was, no, he doesn't fund me. Okay, who knows? Oh, Milo does. And it says Shulman absolutely funded Laura. So I think I wasn't going to share it until I saw this, because what's relevant about this is not the back and forth yelling, but that she's provably funded by the Zionists, which she's been denying forever. And I think that's very important to recognize. I think we all know this, by the way. And he says, I know her. I know because her grants were once paid through my organization. We tried to teach her basic reporting skills. In 2018, Dr. Bob, the guy, asked for a sit rep. He didn't share my staff's optimism about her potential. He was right. We were wrong. And gives you the data that shows you that. They're screenshots. You can decide for yourself. Very interesting, though. This is the next point we're going to get into, and by and large, is the social media infiltration influence, which is wild right now. All this shows you is it goes back a long way, that they have been funding and manipulating people on this or at any social media platform in this country, news media, government, our entire lives. Now, you can read this. This is Candace Owens alleging federal government is lying about absolutely everything involving Charlie Kirk. By the way, I added absolutely, just lying about everything involving Charlie Kirk assassin suspect Tyler Robinson, and claims he never stepped foot on Utah campus. So I haven't been following her work recently, but she has been, and not really ever, to be honest, but I was interested in what she was saying about this, and whether or not, I'm curious. I'm going to look into this more. Like, to what degree? She's simply saying that they're making all this up, or lying rather, about the story, which I think I also agree. Last I checked on the story, I think it's pretty inconsistent. My point on this in general, though, is, let me go to this one first. I'm not going to get into this too deep. I want to include this for you because I do think it's interesting. And there's a lot of these, especially from Diligent Denzian, doing a lot of this right now. In fact, going back and forth very weirdly with the current owner of Turning Point USA. There's a bunch of them down here. But he says Charlie Kirk's camera staff, which you can see, I'll show it in a second, pivots to position facing where Kirk will be carried out without even looking after he was shot. I do find this very hard to explain. He hears the shot and immediately pivots to where Charlie Kirk is expected to come out without looking. Let's not forget, this other guy grabs the camera, and that's what they're debating about. Arguing that the police asked him to do that. I agree. That doesn't make much sense. But who knows today? Question everything. Police could be just as incompetent as anybody else. But usually, we never saw the site shut down. There was no tape. There was no forensic. That's very strange, at least in that very first long period of time. So what you can see is this guy here is filming right there, shot, and turns right there. And they all run over there and they're filming. It's very strange. Like he's getting ready to film the carry away. There probably could be other ways you could explain that. Anyway, I'm just including this because I do find this really odd. So ask questions about this because like we already broke down. Actually, I'll grab that. There's a lot of, it's very obvious, like with Butler, for example, and it's not just because we want to always make that case. There's plenty of these events that I'm like, it doesn't seem, I don't even focus much on. There's something about this that's obviously questionable, guys. Very prominent Republicans are pointing it out. I'll include the show we did, was Israel involved with Charlie Kirk's death? Let's look at the facts. But what I think is interesting about this is just that there are a lot of anomalies. But what I was going to say is that, I'm not planning on diving super deep into the ongoing nuance of these conversations, like I said before, in general, because I feel like it's designed to make you lose your way. I will report on the facts that we can prove as they develop. but the kind of like nuance of the day-to-day, like criticism, investigation of what they're finding that we can't prove, it's a trap, in my opinion, for people like right now. I need to continue to report what's going on, what we can prove, what you can use to research. With that kind of conversation, I think we did our due diligence to begin with. As it continues to trickle out, I'll wait for. You're not going to see another, unless there's a major development, some deep dive on the nuance of each thing. I just don't think it's worth my time right now. They're lying to you. I think we can very easily see that, and that's usually where I kind of hang it until we find more facts. So clearly, we're being misled. Let's wait for things we can prove going forward, just to make that clear. But there are plenty of people out there doing good work on this, and it's worth your time to look at it. I just think with how much I have to decide between, that's where my mind is at. But overall, it's ridiculous where these things are today. Mel adds another interesting point to this. She says, let me get this straight. Yesterday, after the New York Post published what it claims is the letter written in May 2025 to Benjamin Netanyahu from Charlie Kirk, in the article the Post includes no details of how it came into the possession of the letter, only linking to an anonymous scribed account for easy download dissemination. The story, that's very weird. How would you even prove that? The story is then immediately picked up by the most sycophantic Israel supporters and distributed without any question of both legitimate and 100% authentic. As both. Although the Post does not at any point claim to have verified the letter's authenticity. Here's what the title is. Charlie Kirk wrote of his deep love for Israel in a letter to Netanyahu about how to counter rising opposition to Jewish state in the United States. Not that he was becoming aware of the Zionist influence in our country and that Netanyahu's influence on Trump was destroying this country, and he suddenly started to see that and still supported Israel, it seems. The nuance, the difference between the Zionist influence and Israel as a state or people that country that don't believe in Zionism. That's what I believe. Overall, this just seems like a very, very shady, suspect letter dumped into the conversation to keep the narrative going about what they want you to think Charlie was. Can question it, but there's a lot of suspect stuff like this around it. And lastly on this, guys, I'm just so tired of these partisan games. So here's Eric Daugherty, by the way, just, wow, whatever they said, cheerleader. He's Nick Sorter with, different color hair. He says, Steven Crowder put on a bulletproof vest and hired an army of security to go change my mind. Maybe, mind you, he only has to do this because of the left. Now, what does that remind you of? Yeah, it reminds you of exactly what the left would do or what Zionists would do during the campus protest, right? They come out, there'd be some Jewish Zionist comes out with 17 security detail and they have to go, oh man, look at all the detail he has. That's because of all the people hating on Jews. My point is they would use the security they hired as the proof that Jews are being attacked. Remember, that's not what was happening. They've been exposed 100 different ways over. Not that there isn't anti-Semitism or those things don't happen, but in those cases, they were lying to you. It's come out every which way and on video, in court, even Stefanik screaming about things that were said in schools that later the police came in and said, that's not actually true. It didn't even happen. And they still say it. The point is that their presence of their security does not prove the bad things happening. It proves that they think that or that they're using that to prove that that's what's happening. So Steven Crowder putting on a bulletproof vest does not prove anything other than he thinks there's a threat. It does not prove that the left is a threat to him. Now, it probably is in some ways. Just probably like both sides of the crazy partisan teams where politics might be a threat to me because people like that are lunatics in many ways. So nobody should be acting in violence against anybody. Just because he would say things you disagree with does not mean it's justifiable to do anything wrong. Like I even need to say that. The point is that this is the partisan game of doing the act, the show. You're putting on the theater show to go, look at how much I'm at risk and I'm doing it anyway. So they can come out and say, see, that's the left causes. Maybe, or maybe you're just doing it to make a point because you're a political show. I mean, it's just the same thing. That's all I want people to ever point out. It's the partisans do this and use their actions to point at the other side. It constantly happens. Look, imagine having to hire an army to speak in America. I'm willing to bet you he probably didn't need to. I mean, look, I'm not going to diminish the reality of what happened to Kirk. That's obviously something crazy. I don't think this was some random lone weirdo, but that happens regardless of this and has been happening our entire existence. It's them using these things to try to make it something that it's not. And now there's all this, look, there's 75 posts today from people making this big deal about him walking out and putting his life at risk. Yeah, so does everybody else doing the same thing. Now, let's talk about overlapping of Stargate. Now, quick jumping back to the health point. I wanted to put this first before we finish with Israel. And you'll see why. Well, let's talk about So to connect this part, like, so we were talking about the Israel sort of influence. Keep that in mind. The infiltration, rather. We also talked about the Pfizer infiltration, with regard like the health field and rather just Pfizer manipulation and what Trump is doing. So connecting both of those things with Stargate and then bringing it back into what it really seems to be largely about, which is surveillance. But Sense Receptor again says Jay Bhattacharya reporting that the Cancer Clinical Data Initiative is a vast treasure trove of data. Now, you know what he's talking about. I'll play it from Ellison as well. This is Stargate. So it's important to think, and that's why I'm glad Sense Receptor caught that, is framing it that way. So think about this and recognize this is not only, like I said, we knew Stargate was not going away. It is an mRNA platform. It's not stopping. Now all they're showing you is that this is going forward, and they're either going to just call it something else, or at the end of the day, it continues this direction. And this goes for two reasons, both health and surveillance.
Well, it's such an important thing that President Trump has done. There was an initiative that he launched in 2019 called the Cancer Clinical Data Initiative, and we've collected a lot of information.
Was that started by Trump? Not that I even necessarily care that much, but I think I thought that was under the Biden administration. It's just so funny how they all do that. They'll try to claim the benefits of the things the last one did and try to push off their problems the other one. It's just funny. I could be wrong, by the way, but I thought that started in the Biden. Anyway, the point's the same.
About patients with cancers, like kids with cancers, and it's some of them are so rare that very few patients have them, and it's just a vast treasure trove of data. This new initiative, we're going to double our investments in analyzing these data with state-of-the-art AI technologies, so that we can actually learn from them and then get better results for patients. Like, patient comes in, we find the molecular signature of their cancer, and we find similar patients, all anonymized, of course, see what they got, how they got better, and then change how we treat the patient so that we learn that lesson. It's just a great thing. It was a feel-good moment. The president, I think he's done a really, really good thing.
Doc, I also read that this is going to be about sharing information with other healthcare providers, being able to communicate quicker, faster, any kind of new breakthroughs, treatments.
Yeah, so this is one of the problems with it. Takes often, like in science, you publish a paper, it takes months and months and years. This will really speed up the way that that providers and people who care for cancer patients, kids with cancer, communicate with each other. It'll just turbocharge our efforts on childhood cancer. It's one of those things where you wonder why other.
Hold on, I need to make a point here. Something that stood out to me that are developing in my mind. Let me go back a little bit. This is actually really interesting to me. Now, don't forget, this is Stargate, okay? And the overlapping of the data, it's really very obvious to me the way they keep trying to frame this, which tells me they know what they're doing. Do you think they don't have access to studies? You don't think they share information behind them? That's ridiculous. What they're talking about is your data. That's what, he started with the idea. It's a treasure trove. Your data about what you've experienced and what's going on with cancer, not just the research that's being done that they all can look at, that you can look at. Not in every possible case, but what? Let me make this point.
Information with other healthcare providers.
The patient, so that we learn that lesson. It's just a great thing. It was a feel-good moment. The president, I think he's done a really, really good thing.
Doc, I also read that this is going to be about sharing information with other healthcare providers, being able to communicate quicker, faster, any kind of new breakthroughs, treatments.
Okay, so you could argue that, in the process of in a live like a surgery, right? If some massive thing they find out that they could share, but see, that's not. That doesn't seem to make sense, because these things are commonly published, if that happens, in something that is shared and people can access. So what they're really getting at, honestly, in any way I can even carve this, is your information. That's all this comes down to, while trying to act like it's some science sharing thing. It's about your personal private data. That's what they already told you. The unsiloed information to train the AI models. And they came out and made the argument that we're going to demand that they show you what they have on you. No more information blocking. It's like, first of all, how do we know they're even being honest about that? Secondly, all they're really saying is that the providers then have the right to your data. Because that's really what that means. It's a typical way of the government to be like, we're giving you this thing, which is really taking from you, or enshrining a thing that nobody ever wanted in the first place.
At least in my opinion, I think.
Sorry. So I bumped that on accident. Here, keep going.
Faster, any kind of new breakthroughs, treatments.
Yeah, so this is one of the problems with it. Takes often, like in science, you publish a paper, it takes months and months and years. This will.
Okay, so explain to me right there. So Jay Bhattacharya publishes a study, or rather, it took years to get the study done. In what way does sharing personal cancer information somehow now make that different? I mean, really think about that for a second. So you now have access to whatever you just did in the surgery, or your personal experience with cancer, or whatever they had a breakthrough. So if they had a breakthrough with a study that was published, so in what way does that published information get faster exchanged other than, really think about this. This does not make any sense. And I think it tends to expose the way that they try to make these things make sense to you. If it's a study that's being done, if there's some kind of intermediary they can now just dump it in, does that mean that it's not peer-reviewed? I mean, guys, you have to be clear about this. If you really be logical, they're talking about your personal information and trying to make it about scientific studies, unless I'm missing something, which is always possible.
Really speed up the way that that providers and people who care for cancer patients, kids with cancer, communicate with each other.
Okay, but so you said that people care for cancer communicate. How is that the same as a study being done and somehow having that information get there faster? Even the way he was talking makes me think that he knew what he was doing right there. Just being honest.
It'll just turbocharge our efforts on childhood cancer. It's one of those things where I
don't even say that very well may be a positive benefit. Genuinely, right? The lurch into this mRNA, which is what it is, by the way. Don't forget, mRNA AI-driven platform. And very well may, as they steal everything they can from you and use it for tons of other nefarious purposes, may have the positive side effect of helping children with cancer. Maybe that's worth it. You can decide. I err on the side of personal freedom and constitutional rights.
You wonder why other presidents didn't do this. I mean, President Trump did this in 2019. Now we have new technologies like AI, and he's following up with an investment to make sure that we take advantage of all the data information we've collected and do.
Yep, and there it is. Does that sound the same as sharing scientific studies before they're published? It does not.
Excellent gold standard science, so that those kids with cancer, they'll have a better outcome than the kids that you saw in the Oval Office, and of course they're doing great.
Okay. It's like Neuralink. Oh look, he's moving his arms again. Like, do you think that's really what it's going to be? You think they're going to somehow be giving away Neuralinks to children with them? I doubt it. I'd hope so. But even if that happens, it's not the only thing they're using it for. Children with cancer. One of the most absurdly manipulated profiteering businesses out there, cancer, which it is. It's a business industry of basically promoting funding for research that is more funding and advertising. I mean, look at the breast cancer lie. I'm not saying we shouldn't care about this, but 90% of this budget, last time I checked a while ago, a huge portion of the budget goes towards advertising. Breast cancer awareness. Okay. Is anybody unaware that breast cancer exists? That doesn't then fold into I guess the argument is that produces more donations that become more, but if the vast proportion keeps going back into advertising, it's a business. Now, yeah, there is probably some positive benefits to that. How about we just argue that maybe you shouldn't put the vast majority into your profiteering business or any number of those things? This is about kids and cancer as they present it to you. When you go beyond that, it becomes something quite different, I argue. And we'll get into that. Now, this was just another post about, the turbo cancers and what's being caused by the reality of the mRNA overlap. They're going to now make mRNA shots for cancer that then turn out to cause cancer. Might be a problem. In fact, I'll include the one I tend to go to. It's a great overlap. They haven't updated it since 2021, but the Swiss Policy Research overlaps the very, very clear peer-reviewed science showing that these things cause the COVID-19 shots, lymphocytopenia, an immune dysregulation or suppression, which causes turbo cancer. This is peer-reviewed science, guys. You could deny it all you want. You could ignore it. Sometimes peer-reviewed can be wrong, but you can't pretend like it's not there, which a lot of people are doing. So this was the Stargate report from Derek. Trump partners with technocrats to promote mRNA injections, AI, and transhumanism. SoftBank, Oracle, OpenAI. There's Larry Ellison right in the middle. So we'll get into some more stuff about Larry Ellison as it overlaps with Israel, but just recognize that this is everywhere you look right now. It's either, technocrats, Zionists, or globalists, or all the same thing. Like everywhere you look, you can find these connections right back to this one organized effort. Let's not forget as well on the vaccine side of it, in case you forgot, the Trump admin has leaned hard into self-amplifying mRNA shots. Despite the lie of canceling them, it's obvious that even the report that he put out to make that claim makes it clear that Amplitude, Arcturus, And other mRNA, like we just showed you for any number of other things, are going to continue. Even the original COVID shot, which I still find insane to me. The 2026 version of the mRNA COVID-19 shot is still there, approved. I mean, it recently got approved on August 27th after they said they were ending mRNA. I mean, this is what I'm talking about. How in the world can we pretend that makes sense? It's not like they're saying shot's good now. They lied to you about what they were doing and did it anyway. And they just hope that you were too blind to see it. And here is Toby Rogers pointing out that Larry Ellison, and I'll play this for what he said about the Stargate. Now, think about what was reported from Bhattacharya and what they're doing. He didn't say Stargate, mind you, but just to make it clear, it's the exact same thing. So maybe they're trying to get away from saying that because I think they know they got a lot of pushback from it. But here's what he said way back when they first announced it.
Cancers, cancer tumors, little fragments of those tumors float around in your blood. So you can do early cancer detection. If you can do it using AI, you can do early cancer detection with a blood test. And using AI to look at the blood test, you can find the cancers that are actually seriously threatening the person. So we can, again, cancer diagnosis using AI has the promise of just being a simple blood test. Then beyond that, once we gene sequence that cancer tumor, you can then vaccinate the person, design a vaccine for every individual person to vaccinate them against that cancer. And you can make that vaccine.
Do you know why that's so much more alarming too? Because when you're making an individually designed shot, how in the hell do you test that for safety? How in the hell do you then verify that in some larger way? They're going to use the platform model. Like we already said, I'm willing to bet you that they even argue that they already proved the platform during COVID-19. Therefore, all we need to do is add the new information and pump it out. That's what this was designed to do. That's what they're doing. But even let's just say they don't. How do you then make a shot for one individual and claim that that's been tested? It'll be tested before they additionally do things to make it just for you, which means it'll be something different. There's just no way you make sense of this. Or the idea that if there's a problem after that, what happens then? How do you prove that that was what happened? It's a genetically altering thing. They're going to say that's happening out there anyway. How do you prove it? You're the only one because you only had one shot. I mean, it's just obvious that this is more of the problem, no matter how you spin this.
That mRNA vaccine, you can make that robotically, again, using AI in about 48 hours. So imagine early
48 hours. There's your test process, meaning none.
Cancer detection, the development of a cancer vaccine for your particular cancer aimed at you, and have that vaccine available in 48 hours. This is the promise of AI and the promise of the future.
Cool. That is what Jay Bhattacharya was just talking about. So, keeping this in mind, let's talk about Larry Ellison's overlap with, I guess, the overtaking of American media and Israel infiltration in the government. So this is a drop site news article. Ryan Grimm, Murtaza Hussein. Larry Ellison vetted Larry Ellison vetted Marco Rubio for fealty to Israel. Hacked emails reveal. This says everything is coming together for Larry Ellison, the billionaire co-founder of tech giant Oracle, on and off again the richest man in the world and a staunch supporter of Israel, is set to take a lead role in reshaping TikTok in the United States. His son, David Ellison, is moving to take over large swaths of the media, including CBS News, CNN, Warner Brothers, and Paramount, reportedly bringing the Free Press's Barry Weiss to shape editorial discretion or direction. Because, she's completely, the joke, they're all blindly pro-Israel to a fault. The quote, the Ellison family is cornering, can't read right now. The Ellison family is cornering the market on attention and data the same way the Vanderbilts did railroads and the Rockefellers did oil, as Wired recently characterized it. How they plan to operate that monopoly is on course to be tested out in what President Donald Trump is calling New Gaza, the techno-dystopian free trade zone that is to be administered by the Board of Peace led by Donald Trump's and Ellison's longtime political and business vehicle, Tony Blair. All the good guys. Just ask Jones. He'll tell you. right? I mean, think about this. The techno dystopian guys. I mean, how the world, this is everything we were telling you. I mean, Whitney and I were just talking about how incredible it is to go back and listen to a podcast we did 5 years ago, if not more. And I mean, it's not partially. That's why I started sort of in a way I did as well. I mean, it's identical. I mean, look, I think our track record speaks for itself. Anybody wants to look for themselves, it's pretty obvious how much we've been consistently being accurate about, because we're just objective and nonpartisan. And I've been wrong plenty of times. The reality, though, is that everything we were highlighting, like the larger issues, same with a lot of people, by the way, same with David Icke. I'm not trying to make it unique. The point is that outside of the mainstream alternative media, what we were talking about is exactly where we are. And yet those people are still the ones out there pushing and shoveling their partisan lies. But it's just crazy. They're the ones sort of paraphrasing and captioning and printing out our conversations from these basketballs and trying to put articles out. Like it's all over the place. Everything is coming to a head right now. The Gaza is just the Freedom City technocratic overtaking we were talking about from October 7th forward. And it says Ellison has given or pledged more than $350 million to the Tony Blair Institute, which Blair has used to advance Ellison's vision of a marriage between government and corporate power, otherwise known as fascism, and tech surveillance. And I mean that by the definition of the word. Oracle, by providing database and infrastructure and cloud computing services to other huge enterprises like FedEx and NVIDIA, has quietly become one of the most powerful companies in the world. So you got Oracle, Palantir. What's the central common thread? Israel, it seems, and surveillance and control over your life. As the nation's top diplomat, Secretary Marco Rubio, apparently underneath Stephen Miller today, you know what that means, also has played a role in TikTok talks that steered the company toward Ellison. After playing a lead role as a senator in demonizing the app, he was also closely involved in the rollout of Trump's plan for Gaza's future, which hands the enclave to Tony Blair. Hard to miss these overlaps, right? Now, what's important to recognize is the TikTok point. That was, remember, Greenblatt came out and said, we have a TikTok problem. It's a generational problem. It's not left and right. You have Netanyahu now publicly in front of influencers. He's paying, by the way, to saying, yeah, we need to grab TikTok. You just don't even hide. That's my point. It's right in your face at this point. Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, tasked the Blair Institute in the spring with coming up with a post-war plan for Gaza, which was recently completed, the Times of Israel reported. You know all this. The plan's clear. We'll get to it again in a minute. Wherever that was, I think right here. This is the plan. This is what was you got these fake Patriot MAG influencers out there telling you this is fake news. Classic. Now, the interesting point quickly is the idea of Jared Kushner. I think I'll just play this really quickly. And so the point is that Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, is the one that's been kind of facilitating a lot of this behind the scenes. You won't be surprised to find out. Maybe it's over here. Hold on. Yeah, I'll just play this real quickly. I think this is funny. So this is when she was asked about very obvious, like objectively clear conflicts of interest. There's no denying any of this, right? This person has money interests with groups that he's facilitating for the U.S. government. That's a classic textbook conflict of interest that used to be a problem. Not today, though. Here's what she was asked. Oh, this one here. Sorry.
Did the White House decide that it is appropriate for Jared Kushner to be working on matters that involve Qatar, the UAE, Saudi Arabia, 3 countries that combined have given him more than $2.5 billion for his investment firm?
I think it's frankly despicable that you're trying to suggest that it's inappropriate for Jared Kushner.
That was a pretty basic, straightforward question. He's got conflicts of interest. What's your math on that? How dare you? How dare you suggest the provable thing that's obviously happening? I mean, that's insane.
Appropriate for Jared Kushner to be working on matters that involve Qatar, the UAE, Saudi Arabia, 3 countries that combined have given him more than $2.5 billion for his investment firm.
I think it's frankly despicable that you're trying to suggest that it's inappropriate for Jared Kushner, who is widely respected around the world and has great trust and relationships with these critical partners in these countries, to strike a 20-point comprehensive detail.
It's irrelevant. So great, the deal's great. So that's not the question. She knows that, though. She's deflecting. There's a conflict of interest. How'd you reconcile that? That's ridiculous. So, he did great, and he's respected, and there's a big deal that he made. That's insanely stupid. Like, you couldn't have. I could fumble. Anybody could have made it better. I mean, the bottom line is they don't care. And guess what? You're just like the left you love to make fun of. How dare you say the thing because it's a Ray? I'm insulted. I'm offended. I'm offended by that. That's what she's doing. You're clutching your pearls. You're doing exactly what you make fun of the left for doing. Guess what, guys? It's because they're the same thing. That's why I said this, just to make a joke out of it. I said, when feigned outrage is all they can muster for a very obvious conflict of interest, or anything that's obvious, then you know that they're exposed. It's pretty simple. But of course, look at that. It's almost like it's not even there on this platform. That's impossible, isn't it? That was posted at 1:59. So, that Rubio finds himself in such a central position is in part thanks to Ellison, who has been a major patron of the Cuban-American former senator from Florida. Ellison's first vetted Rubio, because it's normal for technocrats and Israel influencers to vet American politicians, right? That's just the normal way of things. For his fealty towards Israel back in early 2015, according to previously unreported email correspondence reviewed by Dropsite. What all this is showing you, it's not new now. The point is these oligarchs, these Israeli Zionist, technocrat globalists have been ultimately dictating U.S. policy for a long time. As Secretary of State, Rubio launched an unprecedented crackdown on speech, for Israel, like before. It's not new. It's not only from today, right? Left, right, same damn thing. Detaining, unprecedented crackdown on speech, detaining and attempting to deport critics of Israel precisely for the crime of their criticism of Israel. In early 2015, Ellison was emailing Ron Prosser, who was serving in the tail end of his time as Israeli ambassador to the United Nations. He currently serves as the Israeli ambassador to Germany. Israeli government is the point. At the time, Rubio was seen as a strong challenger in the GOP presidential field that would ultimately include underdog Donald Trump. The emails show the Israeli diplomat and Ellison arranging to meet one another, with Prosper soliciting Ellison's views on Rubio as a potential candidate who would advocate on behalf of Israel. It says on April 30th, Prosper sent another message to Ellison to follow up, sharing his phone number and thanking him again for the evening they spent together. Quote, how was the conversation with Marco Rubio? Did he pass your scrutiny? Do you have a chance to talk about Israel? Would love to chat. A few hours later, Ellison responded in the affirmative. Hi, Ron. Great meeting with Marco Rubio. I set him up to meet Tony Blair. Marco will be a great friend for Israel. Right, all you swear your allegiance. We'll do whatever needs to be done. That's what they all do. This is not about anything other than Zionist influence in politics. A month, and that's not to say that there's not Jewish supremacy, just like there's overlaps to all of it. That's a fact. But it's not only about Judaism. It is clearly not even about Judaism. It's about Zionism bastardizing Judaism. But even B'Tselem, the leading Israeli human rights group, will tell you that that's a Jewish supremacy issue. Which, I'm going to grab it. Just for those new people that may try to pretend that's something not. January 2021, leading Israeli human rights group, a regime of Jewish supremacy from the Jordan River to the Mediterranean Sea. But also remember that there's massive groups of Orthodox Jews in Israel that call out Zionism. I played that clip to start from Avi Shalom, an Israeli historian who's telling you that it's an apartheid state. It's not hard to see. This is a month later. Ellison, who had backed Mitt Romney in 2012, hosted a fundraiser for Rubio at his mansion in Woodside, California. That would be only the beginning of a broader range of support that the tech billionaire would offer in attempting to bolster Rubio's campaign. Now, don't forget, guys, most of these people today who are circling around Trump's administration, they used to be Democrats, like Dershowitz and anybody else. And the amazing reality of the people who said they were fighting Democrats and deep state to now suddenly absorb them and be like, we're winning, shows you're being lied to. It says, over the course of the 2015-2016 primary, Ellison plowed $5 million into the conservative Solutions Super PAC, which supported Rubio, who, as Ellison privately hoped, advocated vocally for Israel throughout the course of his presidential bid and beyond. Stephen Hilton told the San Francisco Chronicle that he found it interesting that Ellison, who was not then well known as supporting of the right-wing causes, should support a candidate as conservative Marco Rubio. I see it's not about left and right. They use left and right to manipulate you, in this case, to support Israel. Overall, it's about their interests. They laugh at us. They laugh at people that take part in the two-party illusion. The announcement by the Handala hack team that it had gained access to Prosser's emails, this is the group that was apparently responsible for it, was made around the same time it announced the trove of emails of Ehud Barak, which we just talked about, which Drop Site News published, which was very important to read about, which talked about the important discussion of Israel, the beginning through Epstein and the Israeli prime minister, provably connected, creating what was the beginning of their tech infiltration. Very important article to read. It's linked right there. Because this is what it was Mongolia at the time he was setting up a deal with, but this was Israel using Epstein's connections to infiltrate tech worlds all over the world. In other words, it says if the relationship persists, Ellison and Oracle are positioned to take a lead role in redeveloping Gaza. Great. We don't have to guess at what type of society Ellison should hope to usher in. On an investor call last year, he said, citizens will be on their best behavior because we're constantly recording and reporting everything that's going on. That's the future he's building, here and anywhere else.
Police will be on their best behavior because we're constantly recording, watching and recording everything that's going on. Citizens will be on their best behavior because we're constantly recording and reporting everything that's going on. And it's unimpeachable. The cars have cameras on.
Oh, great. Okay. So let's pretend for the moment that he's involved with the reconstruction of Gaza. What do you think he's going to build? Well, they already told you. A technocratic situation. They have digital IDs, digital money, digital surveillance. I mean, we're going to be watching. You can't do anything. We're going to be checking. That's Israel doing that. So nothing new. Just like I said last time. All they're going to do is take what they want, shove them into a new spot where they're going to make them live in that situation. It's going to be exponentially worse than what they're dealing with now. Now, I'm not saying that in the real-time starvation, bombing, raping, and torture, but they're live up until that point. So this is almost designed to make them suffer so much that they'll take whatever they hand them next. It's kind of what it feels like. The world should not allow any of this. It's the most obvious genocide we've ever seen in our entire existence, guys. It's absolutely insane, and they're doing it anyway. They're just rolling forward. He says, signing off, he suggests that they touch base again to continue collaborating on methods to support Israel, him and Rubio. Or him and Prosser about Rubio. I will rebase in Israel, he says. I would love to talk to you about some ideas I have that might coincide with things we spoke about in our last meeting concerning your wish to get more involved in Israel, to Ellison. The email archive, which tapers off in 2016, contains no further correspondence. Now it says, Ellison, who briefly became the richest man in the world this year after a rise in Oracle stock, I wonder why, said in 2014 fundraiser attended by other pro-Israel billionaires, there's no greater honor than supporting the Israeli military. We played that clip for you. He's just like, Israel's the only thing I care about. Ellison is also known to be close to the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who has been a guest at his home in his private Hawaiian island Ellison owns. In addition to Ellison's personal stance reporting by responsible statecraft on separate set of leaked emails from former Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak shows that other top officials at Oracle are aligned with this goal of influencing U.S. public opinion towards Israel. It's not secret, guys. They're literally reframing the conversation. They see that that's why I framed it the way I did today. The American people are not buying it, but they're just consolidating control over every data source, every media, and then yet calling you racist for pointing out obvious consolidation of Zionism. That's the game, guys. I mean, you could let's just even say you don't think that's the case. You could argue it doesn't matter who's doing it. Let's just say it's even Larry Ellison by himself. That is a control that we should not allow. That it's not in every context. This is a violation of, I mean, even in regard to monopoly laws, but free speech is the real point I'm getting at today, because they've already been censoring people in real time around Israel and so many other things. And this guy's tapped into the highest levels of power, not just media, not just corporations, to control the public influence, to counter the rise of boycott, divestment, sanctions. That was a direct point they made. That's unconstitutional. You can boycott, divest from, and sanction whatever you want in the sense of your own personal actions, but the mean is to drive government to do it. But the idea is it's always your right to be investing in any of those things. It says that means getting the message to the American people in a way that they can consume it. That's propaganda, guys. We believe that we have to embed the love and respect for Israel in the American culture. Whether or not we want it is the point. Whether or not we feel it is the point. Their game is to force that idea because that's what's in Israel's interest. Is that hard? It's impossible to miss. As part of while they're committing a genocide and asking you to praise them for it. As part of the agreement, Oracle will audit TikTok's all-important content algorithm, which will be retrained and operated in the United States outside of ByteDance's control, which already influenced by Israel in the first place, is just more consolidated by them today. It says, since the onset of the war and genocide in Gaza Strip, pro-Israel officials in the U.S. have fixated on TikTok, allegedly being the primary factor driving the rapid decline in support for Israel among young Americans. All that means is one of the platforms that was getting the most traction on things you could prove about Israel. That belief has also been echoed by Israeli officials, as well as influential pro-Israel activists like the ADL and Jonathan Greenblatt, who emphasized to the Israeli Knesset earlier this year the importance of capturing TikTok. Netanyahu himself has been the most forthright about the importance of Israel and its supporters taking control over the video platform, a gift that Ellison now appears ready to grant him. Quote, weapons change over time, Netanyahu said. The most important ones are on social media. That's what Netanyahu just said. So, beyond this one, here is what Chris Menhan points out in regard to the same conversation, highlighting the emails. Just want to point that out. Ellison was exchanging intel with Israeli ambassador Ron Prosser. That's the person. Now, as a private citizen, it's different, but the way he's connected now, I mean, it's obvious what's really happening here. And what everything Trump's doing every day with all of his actions are creating either a distraction or an air that allows this kind of lawful activity under a guise of national security or threats of the left or terrorism or whatever. It's what they've always done, but it's in a much more immediate and real time, like in your life kind of way. Now, don't forget this in social media, guys. This is what we just played the other day. This is Israeli politician recently talking about, his name is Yair Golan, that the next step, and this is on the 27th of September, mind you, we've seen action since then from all of them, from Kash Patel, statements made, Ellison. Okay, so the point is, he says the next step, controlling social media, blocking anything authorities label as propaganda. It's already starting. Let me play it again.
During the 12-day...
Shoot. How did I do that? Man, I'm just like 0 for 10 lately for missing a video. God, it's so weird. I don't know how I do that. Let me grab it. Oh, you know what it is? Now I remember. I think I wasn't going to... I'm going to play it now since I stopped. You could laugh at me right now. When I'm going through my process and I'm getting ready, I go through and I'm like, should I play that video? Maybe I should. And sometimes I'm like, no, I played it last time. I'll just make the point. And then I forget. This is where we are right now. Where are we at on time? We're looking good. Okay. Here is the video. So this one, it's just like I said, it is the Israeli politician and the kind of their meeting discussing what the next steps will be for what they're going to do on social media, which of course is wildly unconstitutional or just in general is something that Americans would disagree with. But remember, this is one important discussion we had in the IMA panel. The U.S. government, ignoring the Israel part for a second, the U.S. government is without question, because they've proven this, influencing these platforms. So I argue that very does clearly make that an issue of free speech. To change that would be to push the U.S. government out of that point, and that would be a private company. But it's a very fuzzy line because they pretend it's not true. But the point being is that this is a problem we all agree on.
The next thing we will do, is to put restriction on the social media in a way that not allowed to make brutal propaganda in the social media.
Right. So all they really mean is that you can't put out things that we disagree with. Not the same as saying false, right? Don't forget, this is what TikTok did right away. Appointed an IDF soldier to censor critical content to Jews and Israel, as Megatron writes. In return, Trump will lift the ban. Well, in one case, but the point is that's what happened. And they instantly started censoring Israel and even conversation about Larry Ellison taking over the platform. Instantaneously. People like James Lee or anybody else, they were seeing this right away. And he just talked about Oracle, right? Being inside, talking about the government actions. Or Oracle and Larry Ellison being involved with what's happening in Gaza. Well, let's not forget, this monster is the person who is currently working with Oracle, as well as Microsoft and Google. Or he's an advisor to Oracle and Microsoft and Google. Khalid Falud, however you say that. One of the people we've called out many times since October 7th, at the very least. Here he is praising a terrorist act. I mean, not, like, and he's making, now you see it, now you don't. Are you claiming those were terrorists in there? Are you claiming there was a tunnel under there? Oh, yeah, we're past that point where you have to lie about that anymore. I get it. So you're just going, yay, destroy the infrastructure because that's not a crime? These are the ones who are going to be advising the building of Gaza, or rather whatever they turned in. I mean, that's, yes, guys, this is the overlap. There's no decoupling Israel's influence in this. Glenn Greenwald says there were 2 venues in the U.S. where Israel criticisms thrived. I think it's more than that, but his point is the same, is that U.S. campuses, TikTok, and probably 2 of the most. The campus problem was solved by Trump's new hate speech codes, because that's not like the left you made fun of, right? Firing professors and DEI for Jewish students, which was, see, this is my point. The left comes out with a broad, problematic thing. The right comes out and makes it far more focused in a much serious degree. But you won't, it's not DEI, it's only about anti-Semitic. It's the same. You're making it specific and much more important. It's a precedent-setting reality. It's a stepping stone. Left, right, left, right. It keeps going the same way. The TikTok problem was solved by giving it to the IDF financier, Larry Ellison. This point speaks for itself. And look at some of these posts. Democrats and Republicans are both controlled by Israel through AIPAC. Censored. It's not a joke, guys. See, that's what they truly want to hide from. Not the left, right. They like the left-right divide. That is the problem. Your content is against community guidelines. Why? For pointing out what we can prove? I mean, you have to realize, look at this again. Here's what it says. Democrats and Republicans are both controlled by Israel through AIPAC. No, you can debate controlled, but is anyone debating that AIPAC is 100% funding every single politician it can get its hands on? And that Israel is working through AIPAC? I mean, they promote that. So the truth is the problem. That's very, very clear. Ellie points out that executives at Oracle, like the likely new owner of TikTok, are very outspoken. This was on October 3rd. Are very outspoken in Israeli media about the company's, quote, mission to support the state of Israel and unequivocal support for Israel. Insufficiently pro-Israel Oracle staff are sent for mental health counseling. Look at this. Responsible statecraft. Oracle execs love Israel, or maybe this isn't the job for you. Is that even legal? No, it's really not. But realize that nobody's going to enforce these things because the most powerful, influential, rich, politically, these are the people that rule the world. And I don't mean that even facetiously, guys. These are the most powerful, most influential, at least in this U.S. sphere, but it goes way further than that. And these are the people that are making these decisions. Most people look, Trump has very clearly set the tone that if you do things that even bother him, he'll destroy you, or at least he'll give it his best try. Who cares if it's legal? Glenn says the idea to ban TikTok or force its sale was originally justified in the name of stopping foreign influence over American youth. Somehow, the end result was to forcibly put it in the hands of a multi-billionaire private IDF donor whose primary life cause is supporting Israel. Because that makes sense. It does when you understand what's going on. Also, leaked email reveals communication between a company leading the TikTok purchase and former Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak. Quote, we believe that we have to embed the love and respect for Israel and the American culture. We just read that to you. TikTok investor. The idea that the primary point is to use it to influence, that's not even secret. But the point is you say these things and you're racist all of a sudden. That's why people are waking up to this. That doesn't make sense to an honest person. The same company, quote, secures the UK Ministry of Defense, Home Office, Foreign Office, and NHS data. You understand what's happening here? It's the same with Palantir and with Oracle. It's the same kind of game. Now, I'm not saying they're necessarily the same thing. I believe it's part of the same agenda. Low-key is simply pointing out that you have Oracle over here doing all of this stuff, and you can Oracle in the United States and Israel, and he goes, guess what? Same company is also working with the Ministry of Defense, Home Office, Foreign Office, and NIH data because it's happening everywhere, all over the place. Here is what Ryan Grimm had to say. Gen X Girl posted this. Don't forget to check out her amazing article for TLAV about the zombie economy. I will be having Catherine Austin Fitz coming up in a few days to go over this very interesting overlap of points of the zombie economy, the Israeli bonds, the Americans being forced to invest in them, even though it's losing the money, and a few other points. Trump being anti-capitalist, for example. We're going to have a good conversation about that. I'll grab her article while this is playing, by the way. And she has some other points we'll go into, but check this out. This is what she's calling Israel's 8th front war.
Citing Haaretz, actually, that Israel just approved another $40 million boost to their global propaganda budget. This is on top of a $150 million increase over what they had already been doing. $24 million of that is for, quote, global influence campaigns, and $16 million is to finance international delegations visiting Israel.
So right there, they're simply telling you, like, we're spending incredibly, which is not secret. Every government does it, but more than anybody, to control thought, to influence opinion, and not just, hey, propaganda, here's, commercials about how great Israel is, buying companies, employing people. This is the what the startup nation idea, creating fake companies that they use to influence opinion.
So these are the, whether it's lawmakers or influencers, they fund your trip, flights, from New York to Tel Aviv, nice hotels, good food, free food and drinks, travel, like your entire trip is paid for. They send, good-looking IDF soldiers around with you. It's like just the whole shtick.
Hexas type of soldiers.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. No. BMI is appropriate for that. Hexas would be
no beards.
Not ashamed. No beards.
No beardos.
And try to give them a good time, and then they go back and they have warm feelings, and they meet people who dangle future opportunities. This is much more direct. Like, here's $7,000. Say something nice about us on TikTok, and then they have the problem of, but nobody wants to hear that. So they take over TikTok and juice the algorithm so that you have to hear it. Like, it's just going to show up in your For You page.
Well, that's an important.
Now, see, think about that. Just like with Twitter, guys, the point is that then it gives the impression to average people that that's what everyone's like. It's popular, even though it's not. Even though it's not even the vast majority of people on the platform don't want to see it, don't agree with it. But you get the Joneses and Kurt, all these bigger people, the Nook Sorters, and out there pumping these things out and getting lots of feedback because the algorithm is forcing it in front of everybody. And then even they think it's popular, and they think it is a complete cluster F. Like, it's designed to either, and this is my point about a lot of these people in the mainstream alternative media, they don't even recognize that they are being manipulated. I think that's the largest part of it. I don't mean that they're honest. I just mean that they don't recognize exactly what we're talking about.
Point. Yeah. So this is something that Nick Cleveland Stout reports over at Quincy, which is, I actually think, getting underreported. This is coming from Brad Parscale, also. And
former Trump campaign manager, right?
Right. And part of this is also about, I'm trying to find the exact part where Nick mentions this, but part of it is also about gaming ChatGPT and AI search engine. It's specifically in.
That is like the main focal point, I argue. That's what Grok is being trained. That's why they're altering it to, they're trying to get it to a place to where they can manipulate it while making you think that it's working. I think that largely there, and that's for Israel.
What Nick reports on, he has a new, this is what it is. So he did a follow-up, and it's outlines the Brad Parscale of it all. And Brad Parscale is also, this is coming to Salem Media Group. Did you catch this part of it? So Clock Tower, I think that's Parscale's group, will integrate its pro-Israel messaging into Salem Media Network Properties, a conservative Christian media group that boasts a vast radio network and produces high-profile shows such as Hugh Hewitt, Larry Elder, Right View with Laura Trump. In April, the conservative media network announced Donald Trump Jr. and Laura Trump as significant stakeholders in the new company.
Wow. Is that sped up? I didn't think it was. She talks faster than me, if that's the case. Good for her. Sorry, I just lost my spot.
Salem Media Network Properties, a conservative Christian media group that boasts a vast radio network and produces high-profile shows such as Hugh Hewitt, Larry Elder, Right View with Laura Trump. In April, the conservative media network announced Donald Trump Jr. and Laura Trump as significant stakeholders in the new company. Salem Media Network did not respond to a question clarifying whether it would be compensated by Clock Tower for promoting messages on behalf of Israel or how these messages would be integrated. That is American media.
Right.
That is actually some conservative news outlets that could be then infiltrated by paid propaganda. Right. There's a difference, and that's not
okay. And then, do you think that would be what Marjorie Taylor Greene is discussing when she says we need to label these things? I doubt it. And even if she did mean that, maybe she does. I doubt that's what would happen. The platform would not see it the same way, or they would make an exception for certain. How this works.
A distinction without a difference. Propaganda is propaganda, yes. When people are actually getting paid by a foreign government to do propaganda in ostensible news outlets, that's a completely different ballgame.
Yeah, so follow the money here. So, I guess the money starts in the United States. So it is American taxpayer money. But so then we.
Yeah, I think it is sped up just barely. I didn't think so at first, but either way.
Subsidize Israel. Israel uses the money then to send to Brad Parscale, the Trump campaign manager, who then gives it to Lara Trump and other people, presumably, in order to foist Israeli propaganda into these media properties, because ChatGPT is trained to believe that these media properties have some level of reliability and substance to
Right.
it. ChatGPT is probably told, don't just scrape things from government propaganda websites and then believe it to be the case. Like, it's more reliable to trust news sources rather than direct propaganda. So you pay to have the propaganda then smothered into the news properties, these right-wing news properties.
And the point that he said, but kind of isn't explained well enough, I think, is that they give a certain rating to them, right? So if you're CNN, Fox News, they're wrong, just like anybody. And I think to some degree the algorithm takes that into consideration, but it gives you a grading, right? So CNN, Fox News, you get 5 points, whatever, just making something up. But then some lower rung ones get 2 points, right? I argue social media post 1 or whatever, like that. It's a grading. So everything's taken into consideration. And then there's also a counterbalance on how often you can be wrong, whatever else. But so if they're at the higher level, they're automatically taken at some higher, they get a higher grading in general. So he's saying if they can force their way through these, which they already do, by the way, but in more prominent ways, you'll effectively slant the AI. You will create a situation where the AI will then repeat more toward that direction than anything else. And then especially if they fund it 75 times that day with 75 platforms, it takes over the conversation. Like, it's not hard to see how easy that is to game. And I think they can do that. They have the finances, they have the wherewithal, they can do it.
And then ChatGPT absorbs it into its code. And then when you ask ChatGPT, is Israel good? ChatGPT responds based on the raw material that it's producing from these news shows, which then also they have Wikipedia armies that then try to edit Wikipedia articles, sourcing to these news shows that they have.
All very provable. In case you don't know that, by the way, like they've had entire documentaries how Israel outlines their Wikipedia army. It's not a joke, even though weirdly enough, you'll see people online call you racist for pointing it out.
Fought internally inside Wikipedia to get labeled as credible news sources. And then you tilt Wikipedia, and then Wikipedia becomes raw material for ChatGPT and other AI as well, because within a few years, everyone's understanding of reality will be shaped by whatever these AIs tell them is the reality. So there's this massive arms race to shape what that reality is going to look like.
And by the way, this happened right after, and Nick mentions this. We probably mentioned this on the show, but the SKDK Knickerbocker campaign to run a bot farm for the Israeli narratives on social media.
Group thing that we reported on, yeah.
Right, yeah, exactly. So this is coming, lest you think it is just conservative media that's being infiltrated, Democrats are taking money to infiltrate social media with these narratives as well.
And
which is, man.
No, and it can't happen a moment too soon for Israel, because let's take a look at the trash that they're currently putting out.
Right. Left, right. Point is, credit to them, right? They're clearly giving you an objective perspective of what they're looking at. Whatever you think about it, question everybody. So do I. Very well done right there. And the reality is pretty obvious to see, guys. They're funding both sides. So, you can't pretend one side's the deep state, one side's the problem. They're doing it to both. They're clearly infiltrating on all of it. I think they've succeeded a long time ago. We're just seeing this final push because the American people are the ones changing their opinion. And they're pulling every possible string they can. And apparently they hold most of them. That's what it seems like. So that's important to recognize. And as she writes here, $40 million propaganda, $190 million total, $24 million for influencers, $16 million for Israel trips, Target, TikTok, and Twitter. TikTok sold to Zionists, $600,000 to Democrat PR for bot army, $1.5 million Trump campaign, or the $100 million from Mary Madelson to annex the West Bank, despite claiming he'll never let that happen, even though it's literally already in the process and almost done with. It's just insane where we are, guys. And all the other points are important as well. The FAR registration showing $900,000 for the influencers that Netanyahu is paying. Democrat PR firm to run bot army for Israel. It's not, this is the Max's post about the Israel hiring Trump's former campaign manager we talked about. Pan Bondi disband the Foreign Influence Task Force at the DOJ. This is the group that investigated FARA violations. Whole video at the bottom for you to check out. Now, this is what I was talking about. Interesting enough, this is Ian Carroll, 229,000 views. I traded Google for AI, and you should too. Very dangerous right there. You guys can make your own decisions. I think it's, I think it should be few and far between. Where if you find it necessary or think it valid, but never blindly take it at face value, ever. And the idea that you should ever just fall into that. I mean, if like my point is you ever end up, even if you think it work, even if it does work perfectly for you, that the shoe will eventually fall. The last shoe will fall where all, now that's your only possible source. And now it's easy to slowly slant you in any direction they want. Funny enough, here's Ian Carroll, making this post, and this cares all crazy. Check this out. Check out what's sitting on his desk. Hold on. Coming up here, I think. And then we're going to pretty much wrap up with the last few sections. Maybe it's in the beginning here somewhere. So I just think it's funny. So, you remember his comments about Whitney Webb. And he's said very positive things about her too, but I find it strange the way that he's made comments about that. And he just makes a point to have her book sitting right in the shot. It's, who knows? I think he's one of these people that falls in the category of not being aware of how people manipulate, his rise to stardom out of nowhere. And, but it's hard to say whether they continue to do that. I've had moments where I thought he was starting to recognize that and push back, consider everything, question everything, always. But the idea that you should too, that feels wrong to me. And this is a very highly, highly edited, very well-produced video. But he's got the money for it, it seems, with all his influence. But Gen X's Girl, her great article, how American tax dollars prop up Israel's zombie economy. Might as well share that. I added a few more things, by the way, for the share, Blue Sky, and I think Mastodon down there for those that use it. Okay. Now, influence in general has been there for quite a long time. Now, this is a reasonably new one. This is from 2023, and this is Haaretz. Anti-Semitic influencers, fake journalists, inside an Israeli factory for online deception. Been going on a long time. This is Haaretz for Israeli-owned Percepto International, slandering the International Red Cross and recruiting an anti-Semitic internet influencer are legitimate tactics. So paying anti-Semitic influencers to go online and say anti-Semitic things. Now, why would they possibly do that? Because that's the way Zionism works. They need to point at the anti-Semitism that largely doesn't exist to say that's why we have to exist, even though Zionism is not Judaism. It's a manufactured hate cycle. Most Jews are starting to call this out in the world, at least from my perception. I think it's very clear. I mean, if you get prominent people like Seth Rogen coming out and going, we've been lied to about everything about Zionism in Israel, it's easy to see that this is infiltrated to the highest levels of everything. And they're desperate. That's why this is all happening, in my opinion. Recognize that they've been lying to you about every part of their existence, their entire existence. And that's not about Jewish people at large. The reality is they're bringing on people to be the people they point to say, see, look at the problem, and censor Americans and everywhere else for that matter. Now, here's what Kash Patel recently came out and said. I think it's important to consider the timing of all of this. Let me grab it. Damn it. I was just going to read it, and then I decided not to. So Kash Patel, I mean, there's a lot to overlap with Kash Patel. I mean, I think he's the easiest target, in my opinion. I think, whether you want to talk about the PragerU overlap with his girlfriend, worth considering, guys. It very much matters. I wouldn't say that proves anything necessarily, but it's worth knowing. I just think that he's, somebody who is desperate for power, somebody who wants to be seen as the highest echelon, even though it's pretty self-evident that he's not, would be easy to manipulate, in my opinion. Here's what he recently said.
The simple answer, in my opinion, is social media is wildly out of control, and there's too much clickbait in this country. And one of the things I highlighted at Congress in my testimony last week was if we want to protect our youth, we got to get more involved in social media and online platforms, because that's where the folks, the assassins of this world, get radicalized. That's where they're the lone wolf actors.
Yep. And isn't that the left? Isn't that exactly the argument, right? Bad ideas and people go crazy. So we have to censor ideas. Isn't it amazing how we get to this exact same point from the people who were screaming about that before? Because none of them mean any of the things they say. They just like to get you on their side. I'm talking about everybody everywhere, but people that are in these positions. How do you possibly make sense of that? That's unconstitutional. Like, of course, in the context that we know the U.S. government's involved in these platforms, or the Israeli government for that matter, which makes it a crime. But overall, no Americans believe in this. And they argue the same thing. Well, I shouldn't say no, but in the context of their support group. Republicans never wanted this. They don't call for that, except for the screaming idiots at the top that now want to censor back on the left because they just want to dunk on the other side. Most people who have been told why this is a problem don't then turn around and go do it right back to them because they're not children. Most of the top people in the paradigm seem to be, but I don't think most Americans are because it's counter to their own interests. It's a very simple thing.
In general. And so we have to get after that problem set. And I asked for Congress help in doing so. But speaking of Charlie Kirk, who was a very dear friend of mine, and then I was tasked with leading the nationwide manhunt to find the perpetrators involved, of course we were going to use every resource we have to find every single person involved. And the investigation's still ongoing. But we, as one of the pillars of my leadership here at the FBI, is transparency. We've produced more.
Right. You know, it's just embarrassing. Really? You're going to stand with that? Where are the Epstein files?
Documents.
Where are all the people you told us you'd arrest? Is there anybody show me one Democrat that is arrested. Not that it's saying that's what I'm calling for. That was the promise. That's what most Republicans are saying. Where are all the people you said would be arrested? What about all the people that you said were stealing during Doge? All the Social Security and the lies and the holdovers that were cheating and lying. What happened? Nope, not a single person. So probably all those were lies.
To Congress than my last two predecessors combined by twofold. Just to put it in perspective. So when we take our investigations ongoing, but we, as one of the pillars of my leadership here at the FBI, is transparency. We've produced more documents to Congress than my last two predecessors combined.
Ah, yes, but are they documents that matter, Kash Patel? No, they're not.
By twofold.
And I'll walk into Congress and throw 1,000 papers in the air. Does that mean that I'm winning? I mean, how about we actually have things that, you can throw a bunch of redacted information while lying to the face of everybody as Massey calls you out for completely hiding the people that we already should have access to, or pretending that you're locked out from it, even though it only applies to Florida. All these things that you got exposed in real time for lying about. But yeah, most transparent in history, apparently.
Just to put it in perspective. So when we take our investigations out to the streets, I have the same ethos. And this is how we got Charlie Kirk's alleged assassin, so fast.
Whoops.
The Boston Marathon bomber, which happened in downtown Boston during the Boston Marathon, took 5 days, and there was a police officer was killed in that manhunt. Luigi Mangione, who allegedly murdered an individual, the CEO of that.
You get where it's going. I'm great because we got this guy quick. Well, guess what? The vast majority of people who support you don't think that's the killer. Whether or not it's the case, it's just a sign of where we are today. And I find that very interesting. I also agree that none of this really makes any sense. And realize he's still yet to having to confess, and it's only everybody else working, and the idea of the entire thing doesn't make any sense. The text messages are like pretty much the only thing, and some note that they don't have. And the inconsistency of what they claim. Do you have a photograph of the note? If that's possible, why isn't it being shown? Or you say your aggressive investigating posture gave you, what? It's just insane. Something's missing. That's pretty objectively obvious, but who knows what that could be. The point showing this was censor the internet. We got to shut down the internet, right? Haven't we heard this before? Isn't this the same thing that Trump was trying to tell you?
Because we're losing a lot of people because of the internet. And we have to do something. We have to go see Bill Gates and a lot of different people that really understand what's happening. We have to talk to them, maybe in certain areas, closing that internet up in some way. Somebody will say, oh, freedom of speech, freedom of speech. These are foolish people. We have a lot of foolish people.
As always, foolish because they're right, which you can easily prove. It is freedom of speech issue. And same thing he said about the flag. Those are dumb, those are stupid people. He said stupid in the other one. But they're right. It's unconstitutional, objectively. But he's saying you're stupid for pointing out that he's wrong, not that you're wrong. Or maybe he doesn't know that, which is even more alarming. Either way, it's not new, guys. This is the same old game. It's about restriction, control. And they love to say, we care about the thing the Democrats are taking from you because that gives them control. Look, they care about me. Look how much they're saying my things. Look, they're repeating what I like. That's how simple that becomes for them. And even I'm not saying it's impossible. There are people that are on your side, but you have to recognize, as a child could do, if you're standing back, that people can simply go with the thing you're saying, even though they don't mean it. Right? Doesn't matter how many MAGA shirts they wear or how much they say, they can just repeat back to you what you want to hear. I've got, for example, Patel comes out and says, and this is what's funny, by the way, apparently a screenshot of a Fox News article is his official process for releasing information. James Comey wrote love letters to the ADL and embedded FBI agents with them, which is still happening this very day, by the way. A group that ran disgraceful ops on spying. Yep, still right now. That era is over. No, it's not. This FBI won't partner with political fronts masquerading as what? Liar. I'm 100% on the side that that's completely not true. Not just that it's not happening. You can prove that. Not yet. Maybe it'll start tomorrow. Do you really believe they're going to give up what seems to be like their only outlet? The reality of what the FBI has been and continues to be up until this very moment? This is a statement with nothing to back it up. Just like Tom Homan saying 1,000% increase. It's not true. Look, there's no evidence whatsoever. And if they ever try, they're not even attempting to try to give you something to look at. And you can prove it, looking at what you can prove. It's shocking. They just say things. That's not new. Politicians lie to you, but they do it in ways today that are just hard to wrap your mind around. Glenn comes out and says the ADL has bullied and coerced huge numbers of institutions to take orders from it about whose views should be deemed extremist and thus prohibited. And which, by the way, is right there counter to free speech, no matter what the idea is. He said, and it says, and who shouldn't. As but one example, PayPal uses the ADL to decide who should be expelled, like TLAV, and stole $6,000 from us and completely shut us out of the platform. Yep. Now, my point is, he says we're done with the FBI or at the ADL, right? Well, just simply ask Grok. Aside from Patel's statements, has the U.S. government taken any meaningful or documented steps toward its end with this association? Now, I look myself on places you might find that I can't find anything. Whether this is accurate or not, you can question. We all should. As it says, no, the U.S. government has not taken any meaningful or documented steps to end its association with the Anti-Defamation League, aside from FBI director saying so on Twitter. That's the gist of it. I'll include this. You can read it for yourself. So maybe tomorrow, Ryan, maybe tomorrow everything will change. I hope so. Do I think it'll happen? No, I don't. I think it's very obvious to see who's actually in control of whom here. It's the other way around. But don't worry though, because Nick Sorter came out and screamed with breaking news as always, with his red light as always, with 17 exclamation points, that what Cash just said is true, even though you can't prove it. Because good journalists blindly repeat the FBI director, right? Breaking! Kash Patel confirms the FBI is fully confirms as if it was a claim that was already out there. No, that hadn't been discussed until he said it. So you guys he's just so worthy of making fun of, by the way. But Kash Patel reports and states for the first time that he's cut ties with the ADL, even though that has not happened yet. James Comey brought in the ADL, and he just repeats what he was writing over there. That's what their job is, to just cheerlead and point to what the team says. That's legitimately what they do, even when those things contradict what they are fighting for or what they said the day before. It's kind of crazy. But the point is, he said, we did it. The thing happened, even though you can't prove it did. And as far as I can tell, it didn't actually happen. Now, look, you can say those things, but there's meaningful overlaps that still exist. So you saying I'm not part of it is not the end of that. The ADL right now is still partnered with them and still works with them and is still partnered with Twitter, for example. But what I found very interesting, even though, and this is the same idea, ADL is still overlapped with Twitter. Look, you could check, it's right now the reality. Elon comes out on the first and says, the ADL is a hate group. And they're pointing out, the reality of the ADL should be very obvious to you. But I'll actually grab this, which is there's plenty more for you to find, but this is all you need to know, really. I mean, I shouldn't even say it like that. There's always more. But this, if once you saw this, it answers the question. The true nature of the ADL and how it spies on Americans for Israel. It's very clear. Good documentary to watch, or interview about the documentary with James Lee. But so I don't disagree. ADL is a very problematic thing. Do I think Elon cares about that? No, I don't. And that's what I said. Well, that's an interesting turn. Do you buy it? Most people said no. And then I saw, oh, okay, now it makes sense. Because almost immediately, the ADL is caved under pressure from conservatives and removed Turning Point from its glossary. Oh, I see. So it was a little give and take game. So you guys could all pretend like you're working. Oh, we're fighting the bad guys. And all you did was agree that was going to be taken off because it's in Israel's interest to take it off because now it's working very directly with them. Weird how those things work. Now it all kind of makes sense, right? The game of pushing back, acting like we're separating. so they could say the words out loud, even though the ADL is still working with Twitter and even though it's still censoring and, the same old game, guys. But Nick Sorter gave you the flashlight and the braking sign, so it must be true, right? Weird. Well, I simply said after Cash posted this, meet the new boss, same as the old boss, because we're just referencing what we already talked about. Even WikiLeaks shared this. $7,000 per post. Israel paying undisclosed U.S. influencers amid Gaza backlash. Okay, so if the Israeli government is quite literally on record, he's on video saying this, paying them $7,000 per post to propagandize on this platform for Israel, you might even want to argue that the ADL might not even matter anymore. I mean, either way, I don't believe they're cutting ties. My reality is, if you understand what the ADL is doing, it's what this person's doing right here in one way or another. So at the same dynamic, and they're all a part of this. And on Twitter, you've seen censorship. This is the one I saw today. Israel exposed, randomly has blue check removed. Maybe that's a glitch. Maybe it'll come back today, tomorrow. Who knows? Doesn't look like it. They're paying for it. So, the funny idea, like this is just, I think, about slowly suppressing, downgrading. It gives them a justification to suppress their content because they were very influential. They still are. Nick Cleveland Stout points out that a new firm, now I believe he misused the term foreign agent because I can't find, as far as I could tell, there's no FAR registration for this. Nonetheless, this person looks like he's from a different country possibly. So I don't know. It could be a misunderstanding of what that means. Or maybe I'm wrong. Look for yourself. But he says this new firm was just registered as a foreign agent of Israel. I think what it means is working for the government, which I argue should be the same difference. But from my research, the group Show Faith by Works has not technically been registered with the U.S. government under the FAR Foreign Agent Registration Act. But again, I could be wrong. It says has been paid $325,000 for its work so far, despite only registering as a business in California on July 30th. The firm was hired by Israel to conduct, quote, pro-Israel outreach and marketing to Christians. Look who's hired it. Former principal, Israel Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Interesting. The point is, this stuff is literally everywhere, guys. It's everywhere. Chris Manahan points out, Palantir advisor Jacob Hellberg went from this closed-door meeting with House Speaker Mike Johnson to a meeting with Netanyahu during a trip to the United States 2 weeks later. His husband, Keith Rabios, is on his left. So you have this interchangeable, the power structures of these people from one to the next. I mean, you have to understand this is all interconnected. One's influencing the other. It says the meeting with Netanyahu was part of an initiative to create a direct channel of communication between policymakers in Israel and investors and technological experts in the United States, all of which, by the way, are completely immersed in the U.S. government. Palantir is part of the U.S. government at this point. You can't deny that. And now they're having closed-door meetings with Israeli government. I mean, this is an obvious issue. If this was China, they would be losing their minds. Some of those present are among the close circle of President Donald Trump and have or will have senior positions in his administration. Rabios, for example, belongs to a group of investors and entrepreneurs known as the PayPal Mafia, a group of PayPal founders and former employees that is considered to have substantial influence in the administration's decisions making in the areas of technology and the economy. And as he writes, just naked influence peddling on behalf of a foreign power. Here's what Tucker Carlson recently put out. How are we pretending like the whole world doesn't see this right now? I think we all starting to see that.
War, such as it was with during the 12-day war, such as it was with Iran, the U.S. and Israel versus Iran, bombing on all sides. During that short conflict, IDF officers in the Pentagon, foreign military officers in the Pentagon, and by the way, they're not the only foreign military officers in the Pentagon, to be clear. There are NATO officers, they're from other countries, British.
Yes, but not even close to the same thing. As John Kirikow and plenty of others would very clearly point out, there's a very different situation with the way, and he'll get into saying this, how it was abruptly different, the way that they just kind of feel they can have access to whatever they want. But understand that having like a UN presence or, like he's talking about, those are very different things than the way Israel's represented in this country.
But there are a bunch of Israeli Defense Force officers in the Pentagon that week. And during that week, ask anyone who works at the Pentagon, they enraged American Pentagon staff by just barging into meetings, giving orders, making demands
Think about that.
And nobody did anything about it.
Okay, first and foremost, question it, right? Who knows? Tucker could be wrong. He could have been misinformed. But let's just say for sake of conversation, based on everything else we know, that seems very likely. How does that not show you everything you possibly need to know? They're allowing foreign military to barge in and order around people in the Pentagon. I mean, is anybody else confused at all about that? That should be the end of the conversation in regard to whether or not these people influence policy, which is the only thing I'm actually saying. It's in your face. And all of these screaming propagandists out there pretending to fight for Trump and America first, or not Trump in a large way they are, but they're not acting for this country's interests. And I think they know that.
How can a foreign military officer barge into military headquarters, even if invited, but barge into a meeting and start demanding, we want this, we want that, you need to get on this? Huh? The more you allow that kind of deeply unhealthy behavior, the more you're going to get. And that's exactly what has happened. Because of the weakness of our leaders, we have incited predators in a foreign country to take advantage of us. Oh, that's such an anti-Israel thing to say. It's not anti-Israel at all. It's a demand that the people whose job it is, whose sacred duty it is to defend and represent us, our leaders, both at the Pentagon and all throughout the U.S. government, that they do that they stand up and defend us against all potential threats, against all foreign countries to the extent they need to, and that they do not prostrate themselves before a foreign nation. That's just basic. Why have a government, especially a strong government, if it's taking orders from another weaker government? And that is the state of play. And it has been for a very long time. And they're not even pretending.
It's incredible for him to be, okay, so my thoughts. I mean, as we all should question it, but he's correct. What he's saying is right. And he continues to be, the point is we should all hope these people end up let's just say he's been lying about this and worked for the CIA, whatever you think. And suddenly he goes, I want to do the right thing. I find it hard to believe, but the point is that we should hope and let it continue play out, right? Question it, hold him accountable like you would anybody else any other time. That's why it's always the same. Consider everything, question it all. What he's saying is correct. And it's just important to see that Tucker Carlson, with one of the largest influence bases in the conversation, is saying Israel is controlling U.S. policy, at least to some degree. Taking orders from. I mean, how else do you make sense of that? That's why he's being attacked right now. But question whether that's some kind of, like COVID overlap to gain influence, always. Question what I'm saying, guys. Question everything. But my God. So here, flashback to this article again, the show we did about Walls having the telemessage app on his Signal app that was relaying information back to Israel. It's amazing how little coverage the story got. It's right on your face. Telemessage, an Israeli intelligence app. They were using it, probably still are in the White House. And they made it a Signal Gate app. That thing about he's using Signal, and that it was about the telemessage on it that was relaying the archives to Israel. It's just outrageously in your face today. Netanyahu exposes Israel's global tech infiltration when he talks about multiple points. One of them was about the idea of you have a piece of Israel in your pocket with the phones, but about everything else they were doing. They're really demonstrating to you that they are able to and are infiltrating foreign technology, proving it with this show. This is an interesting overlap. In 2023, in February, we discussed an Israeli company that was caught manipulating at least 33 different elections in the world. In 2023, here are the articles. The secret company apparently manipulates elections for money around the world, many of which he claims were the U.S., by the way. A very prominent Israeli company. This is the article, all over the world, by the way, in German, all over. Secret company manipulates elections worldwide, 2023. Nobody cared. An Israeli company. In fact, a guy that has direct connections to the Israeli government. But who cares, right? It must not be true because it's about Israel and we don't want to be called racist. We then cover this again, by the way. 2024. The Israeli election interference and psychological operation industrial complex. It was because this article, also from 2023, the hacking and disinformation team meddling in elections. It's very clear that it goes well beyond elections. It's all sorts of bullying tactics. It's all right on the surface. They literally have hidden cameras where they catch the guy in there interviewing. Nothing happened. Nobody even called out Israel. This has been going on a very long time. So if you're worried about elections being stolen, maybe we should go back from long before Trump and long before Biden and understand that this has been something else the entire time. Now, we already played this in general. The point is Larry Ellison telling you on top of all of it that the world they're building with their surveillance and Palantir and Israel and everything else is a world where you will be constantly watched because that's what they're doing, right? There's nowhere else around. They're going to be surveilling and enforcing the way they want the world to be. Now, we're going to end with a segment in regard to what's happening in Gaza and how all this connects. A great report from Greg Reese. Now, I'll probably just show you a couple of these points and we'll probably just end with this. Trump has set the deadline for Hamas to agree to a deal for ending the war in Gaza. Now, recently they came back and said they agree to release all the hostages, but they seek changes in the Gaza plan. You know why? You read this, it's because it's been their line from the very beginning. They've always been, the point is Israel claims that's all they want. But now they're saying, no, we don't want them if that means we don't get this. And then what shows you the hostages are not the most important thing to them. So I haven't got to follow up on what they say in response to this. This happened right before I went live. But the reality is that Trump comes out and says, there's a deadline. And if you don't do what we want by then, all hell will break loose. Oh, is that what it looks like to be a peacemaker? Threatening one side to do what they're told, otherwise hell will break loose? I mean, it's just in your face. We should laugh at how stupid that is. And you know what? He said that 17 times. And he probably means it, but all that happens is they just go back to Israel keeps killing people and nothing ever changes because the all hell break loose has already happened. Are you going to rape them more? Are you going to bomb them more? Yeah, probably. But that's already happening. So all Trump is saying is do what you're told, accept your subjugation, or we're going to make it even worse. Acting like he's fighting for the Palestinians. So, and guess what? The deal is going to be blown up by Israel like every other time before. That'd be my guess. They're never going to accept a deal that ends the situation because they need the situation to drive in what they're trying to finish right now, which is quite obvious, which is the Gaza plan, right? The authoritarian, technocratic, globalist plan that they're building that all the fake patriots seem to support. And here's Israeli Minister of Defense, excuse me. The IDF has completed in recent hours the capture of the Netzarim axis up to the Gaza coast, effectively dividing Gaza between the north and the south. This is from the first. This tightens and the encirclement around the city, and anyone leaving south will be required to pass through IDF inspection checkpoints, maybe get raped and tortured and shot. You know, never know. This is the last opportunity for Gaza, he says, Gaza residents who wish to do so to move south, right? Leave the terrorists isolated. Those who remain will be considered terrorists. Right. Okay. So are we pretending still that they're, not being ethnically cleansed and displaced? So they want to stay, you can't, if you do, you're a terrorist. That's not allowing somebody. The reality is they're displacing people and moving them out of the way. That was always a crime. Trump's always been supporting of that. Netanyahu has been always planning this. So all they're simply telling you is we already did this. Okay. So explain to me how you can be in the middle of a deal for something around this when they're in there bombing and killing right now. Separating people, displacing people, and they're trying to make a deal with those people. I mean, how in the world does that even make sense? Because none of this has to do with the Palestinians in the mind of Israel and Trump. They're a side element to this. They're making an agreement between themselves and the PA, which is themselves, pretending like they're making a deal, and then going, Hamas, you have to say yes. Why? Why? Ask yourself why that makes sense. If they're pretending they're dealing with the PA, why are they going, but Hamas has to agree? You mean the group that you keep telling us you're going to destroy? Because they want this to blow up. They want Hamas to say, even when Hamas says yes, they find a reason to blow it up every time anyway. It's a game of creating the allowance of why you can blame them for what they have to do next. It's been the whole time. It's not, I don't even explain this. I think most of the world already sees this. The government supporting it? No, you see it and don't care anyway. It's just, this is what's so hard. This is the thing that keeps me up. The idea that you're failing these people every single day. Every single day, there are people that are starving and being tortured and everything. And they want you to think they're the ones saving them. That's the special kind of evil that we're talking about today. Now, in regard to the flotilla, which there's action, but it's still sort of up in the air. Israel's intercepted. I take that back. There's more supposed to be happening, but in regard to the one we've been highlighting, they were taken hostage and they're being brought back to the United States. Have you heard a word about that from the government? Israel intercepts boat headed to Gaza with humanitarian aid. That's a crime, just like the U.S. is doing to Venezuela, but let's pretend like there's no overlap to making that precedent. Well, here they were back on the 1st. Greg Stoker who was there, saying they're Israel Navy trying to spray us with skunk water, which is the most disgusting mix of sewage and other things that will get you sick. They use it on Palestinians all the time. It is, I mean, in its own right, it could be considered a chemical weapon, and it is a violation of the rights at the very least. And they're doing this in international waters, just like the U.S. is doing. Then they arrest them. Now, here's the crazy part. This is Ben-Gvir laughing at them, not even trying to hide his disdain for people. Israeli Prime Minister Ben-Gvir appears at the Ashdod military port on the 2nd, provoking kidnapped international peace activists, journalists, and flotilla participants, calling them terrorists, like Trump does. See how much that overlaps? Trying to send baby formula to the Gaza people in Gaza. Here he is, laughing at him, calling them terrorists. Well, look, I mean, guys, think about this. Think about how crazy. If he is calling them terrorists, these are people, whatever you think about their politics, call them lefty, whatever you think. Pretty obvious they're not terrorists. These are people they don't like, disagree with, but he's calling them terrorists, which just, as always, the Zionist way about it lets the cat out of the bag. If he's calling them terrorists and he's calling those people over there maybe he's calling anybody terrorists he doesn't like and then killing them all, sort of like Trump is doing right now. Kind of hard to miss that point. These are Americans, these are journalists, and people from other parts of the world, all of which matter. And they don't care. Not only do they not care, they know they can get away with it. Let's not forget there's an American teen, who has been held in Israel for over 7 months. He's an American citizen, 3rd generation, born in Florida, who is still in prison in Israel. Trump, Rubio, Hegseth, Bondi, Cash, Dan, none of them have said a word because they're all cowards and don't care about Americans where Israel's involved. I don't know how you can deny that. Here's Trump reporting inside of his military meeting, or it's being reported from that Trump tells ministry brass, U.S. faces an invasion from within. And you know why I think that's very manipulative? Because I think he's trying to make that float for the crowd that thinks he's saving Israel for last. Because that is what's happening. The problem is that he's pointing at the left. He's using these things to keep you going against yourselves. They're destroying this country. Colombia expels Israel diplomats over the attack on the flotilla. And they're attacking him like he's a terrorist. The U.S. government's framing him like he's the problem. Think about how inverted all of this is. You know you can see what's going on. You have an inherent, everyone understands good and bad, guys. These people are wrong right now. These people are bad. What they're doing is wrong. It's undeniable. And you're supporting it if you support what these governments are doing. Now, I'll end with Greg Reese's clip about this. Watch it. It's 5 minutes. It's important to understand. But I'm going to leave you here. Please watch it out. I'll end with the clip of the ending clips after this, or ending, graphic. So make sure you stay tuned. Most of this but it's still great the way to see Greg pulls this together. Where this is going, guys, is really undeniable. They're broadcasting it for you. At this point, here's what's crazy. What they're saying they're doing was what they screamed was impossible and blood libel when this post October 7th. Remember that? We're never taking Gaza. Gaza's never on the table. We're just trying to save the Palestinians. Now they're quite literally doing what they always said was a lie. That's anti-Semitic. You just can't miss it. And this is why most people see it. Please find some courage, some momentum, find some action in all this, guys. The world is behind you. We need people of substance and influence who have some ability to influence what people in power think. Some people that can make decisions that might actually stop what's happening. Just maybe slow down the genocide to give some ability to stop what's happening, or just in this country alone, recognize the constitutional crisis that we're in. Recognize the people who are supporting a genocide and telling you it's freedom. Recognize the people who are telling you they're fighting globalism while creating a globalist building of technocratic dystopian cities and freedom cities and all pop up all over the world. Recognize what's happening. Recognize that you're not crazy. That I see it. Everyone sees it. But they want you to think you're alone. You're the only one that doesn't get it. You see it. Call out the partisan side. Call out any side that doesn't agree with your values, that does not align with your principles, regardless of what team it's on. Thank you for being here. Thank you for continuing to support this platform. I've got some really exciting things upcoming. I'd love to break some stuff right now, but I want some things to flesh out a little bit more, but what I can tell you on totally different topic, I got some great stuff coming from Derek soon, some great in-depth investigations. I've got some more work coming out from a few different people that you might not have heard from. And Whitney and I are talking about some really exciting stuff. There's a lot more coming your way, guys. And I just, I feel like despite all the constant attacks, they're still never stopping. I mean, I don't even want to get into half the stuff that keeps going on, what I get sent. The bottom line is that we're pushing even harder, and there's momentum that they can't stop. Or they could, they'll try, but we're going to keep pushing regardless. And I feel like the momentum is because you all out there see it. Honesty, truth, integrity, honor, things that seem to be completely non-existent in the places that seem to scream about them the most. And you're changing it. The world is seeing it. So thank you for being a part of it. I love you all. As always, question everything. Come to your own conclusions. Stay vigilant.
During the 1980s, Benjamin Netanyahu became good friends with American real estate developers Charles Kushner and Fred Trump. Kushner's son, Jared, went on to marry Fred's granddaughter, Ivanka Trump. Jared has been talking about the valuable real estate in Gaza for a few years.
In Gaza's waterfront property, it could be very valuable.
In May of 2024, the Jerusalem Post publishes an image of Netanyahu's Gaza 2035 vision. In October of 2024, candidate Trump said that Gaza could be better than Monaco.
It could be better than Monaco. It has the best location in the Middle East, the best water, the best everything. It is the best. I've said it for years. I mean, it could be the most beautiful place. The weather, the water, the whole thing, the climate. It could be so beautiful.
On his inauguration day, President Trump began discussing Gaza in terms of valuable real estate.
Gaza is interesting. It's a phenomenal location. On the sea, best weather. Everything's good. It's like some beautiful things could be done with it, but it's very interesting. But some fantastic things could be done with Gaza.
How do you see the future in governance for Gaza?
Well, it depends. I can't imagine you could have, you certainly can't have the people that were there. Most of them are dead.
On February 4th, he referred to Gaza as the Riviera of the Middle East.
Everybody I've spoken to loves the idea of the United States owning that piece of land, developing and creating thousands of jobs with something that will be magnificent. I don't want to be cute. I don't want to be a wise guy, but the Riviera of the Middle East, this could be something that could be this could be so magnificent.
On February 26th, Trump posted a bizarre AI video of Trump Gaza. On April 7th, Trump describes Gaza as incredible oceanfront property.
Well, you know how I feel about the Gaza Strip. I think it's an incredible piece of important real estate, and I think it's something that we would be involved in, but having a peace force like the United States there, controlling and owning the Gaza Strip would be a good thing.
On July 14th, Trump referred to Israel's 2005 removal of its ground troops and settlements from the Gaza Strip as one of the worst real estate deals ever made.
I call it the Gaza Strip, one of the worst real estate deals ever made. They gave up the oceanfront property, one of the worst deals ever made.
On September 17th, Israeli Finance Minister Smotrich claimed the deal to rebuild Gaza was on Trump's desk and described it as a real estate bonanza.
There is a business plan built by the most professional people, which is on President Trump's desk. How this thing turns into a real estate bonanza, I'm not joking, it pays for itself. By the way, I started negotiations with the Americans, and I'm saying this seriously now because I'm also demanding. After all, we paid a lot of money for this war, so we need to share. How do we make percentages on land marketing later in Gaza? But now, no, not joking, the demolition phase, which is always the first phase in urban renewal, we did. Now we need to build.
Trump has chosen war criminal Tony Blair to oversee the rebuilding of Gaza. And on September 24th, the Central Synagogue in Manhattan explained how the gods demand human blood for humanity to survive.
The greatest lie humanity tells itself is that we have outgrown human sacrifice. We call it by different names now and make our offering to different gods. We offer young men we call soldiers as if the designation means that their mothers cry less when they die. We call masses of humanity collateral damage and turn our eyes away from the pictures of their lifeless bodies as we sip our morning coffee. And the truth is, we don't do it because we are heartless. We do it because we believe that it is necessary for the world to keep running. We do it because we believe that the gods whose favor we so desperately seek, freedom, security, prosperity, flourishing, that they demand blood as the price of their favor. We do it because we cannot see any other choice. When Abraham prepares to sacrifice Isaac, he is just accepting the same bargain of blood we still accept today, that some need to die for the world to flourish.
Greg Reese reporting.